Good afternoon, council and staff. May I have a mover and seconder to call the meeting to order, please? I have councillors Fisher and Moore that the special meeting of the Council of the Township of Springwater of November 27th, 2004 come to order at 1 p.m. All those in favor? And that is carried. Councillor, any disclosures of pecuniary interest? I'm not seeing any. I will now turn over to Director Bedard for today's overview.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and good afternoon, Council. I will speak briefly to the 2025 proposed base budget and the relating tax impact thus far before we move into the remainder of the agenda this afternoon. We can move to the next slide, please. This slide provides Council with an overview of how the township derived at its net base budget. We won't spend much time on this slide. However, it's provided for context as the information here relates to the slides to follow. This slide is also really just an opportunity for anyone watching today to view the slideshow and have all the information that they need at a high level to understand the conversation that we'll be having today. So again, this slide details the township's base budget pressures, as you can see, and as we've talked about, a significant component is labor, as well as the investment in capital that's funded through taxation. Next slide, please. This slide indicates the program changes relating to the township that were referred from the November 25th special council meeting. The net tax impact of the program changes referred is approximately $423,000. Next slide, please. This next slide is a list of the township's service partner program changes that were referred from the November 18th special council meeting. These program changes include 2 from the Springwater Township Library, as well as 2 from the physician recruitment agencies. As the physician recruitment costs are generally funded from the Springwater swing proceeds, there is no tax impact associated with the additional funding requests. Therefore, the net tax impact of the township service partner program changes is approximately $105,000. Next slide, please. This slide summarizes the township's tax levy requirement considering base budget changes detailed earlier, as well as the township's program changes and the township's service partner program changes. Factoring in a net base budget increase of $2.8 million, township program changes of $423,000, and township service partner program changes of approximately $105,000, the consolidated tax levy requirement for the 2025 budget is an increase over 2024 of approximately $3.3 million. So this is the impact factoring in all decisions or all referrals to date. Next slide, please. Moving to the impact on the average or typical residential taxpayer. In 2025, the average single-family detached residential property within the township has an assessed value of $497,000. Again, it's important to note that this assessed value is based on a property valuation date of January 1st, 2016. Factoring in the township consolidated base budget change detailed on the previous slide, the county's projected increase of 3.625% and no change to the education tax rate, the average residential property will see a total tax increase of $420 in 2025. For the average residential property, this equates to an increase of approximately $35 each month. Next slide, please. Next, we'll discuss how the consolidated net tax levy requirement impacts the three tax scenarios previously presented. The first tax increase scenario represents a $328 increase for the average taxpayer. Including program changes, and this is noted at the bottom of the slide, this tax increase scenario represents an increase of $386 for the average taxpayer, or a blended tax rate increase of 8.73%. So on this slide and the 2 to follow, we've indicated the original tax increase scenario, and at the bottom, we have now included the impact that program changes will have on the rate increase. Next slide, please. The second tax increase scenario represents a $46 decrease from scenario one, and this is the original that was prepared last week. Including program changes, this scenario represents a $340 increase for the average taxpayer, or a 7.69 blended tax rate increase. So again, we're comparing what was presented last week to today with program changes that were referred. Moving to the next slide, please. The third tax increase scenario represents an increase of $234 for the average taxpayer. Including program changes, this is now $292, or a 6.60 blended tax rate increase. Next slide, please. Lastly, to provide full context in terms of the Springwater budget impact, this slide is provide information relating to the impact on the average residential property with respect to water and wastewater. Only those properties that are provided with these services will be impacted by this budget increase. The impact of this slide is in addition to the previous slide with respect to property taxes. Based on an annual average water consumption of 180 cubic meters, the average residential property will pay $128 more in 2025. In closing, and this wraps up my budget recap, there are a number of motions on today's agenda for council's consideration, and the township's leadership team is here to assist council with deliberating these motions.
Thank you, Director Bedard. So council, we will now be moving on to our consent agenda. The below consent motion includes all proposed motions from the previous budget sessions. Should a member of council wish to further deliberate a specific item, amend the direction of a specific item, or vote against a specific item, they should request it to be pulled for separate consideration. Noting council that item number 1 would have to be pulled so we have direction for our staff. So pulling number 1, and this time, Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. If we could pull number 1 and address the capital budget items before we move on to the other decisions, that would be helpful.
We can, absolutely. So we will pull item number 1 to be dealt with first, and we will move to the remaining consent items after it's been dealt with. You're fine with that? All right, so I will just need a mover and seconder then to have the operating budget, capital budget, and 10-year plan, please. Moved by Councillor Moore, seconded by Councillor Thompson. And at this time, council, we are speaking specifically to item number 1, with the rest to be dealt with in consent after this. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So thanks to staff for all the work you've done on this budget and for the patience and listening to all of the questions. And you've been very kind and helping me understand some of it. I appreciate Deputy Mayor Cabral also for suggesting the 3 different scenarios. That was really helpful to me. In fact, I'd be prepared to vote on and support scenario number 3. So I'd put a motion forward. Maybe if you could put that one up on the screen, Clerk Marshall. Is there something I need to read or?
Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Before we're put in a position to vote on something, I would really like to go through the capital plan or the capital project justifications so that we can maybe review what's being asked for. And there's maybe some room to, or find some wiggle room in there before we vote on it.
So Councillor Thompson, then we can move to the capital projects and move back to the scenario for a seconder. Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So there was a few things in the capital projects that I had questions about. And if you'll just indulge me, I'm going to go through some. I also wanted to speak about the roads needs study and the $3.5 million that was passed by resolution from this council, and if there's any room there where we could defer to 2026 on some of that work. CAO Schmidt.
CEO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mayor Cogman. Through you to Councillor Moore. So Councillor Moore, we're happy to assist in any discussion or questions you have regarding capital as it relates specifically to the direction provided by council as it relates to the road resurfacing. Again, it is a motion that that council brought forward or directed. Staff has provided for that within the budget. Should council wish to amend that, if you will, again, that's council's prerogative to do so. That said, I would suggest that, if the decision is to amend just for 2025, and I may look to the clerk for this, but I believe if you're looking to just amend for 2025, then I assume that can be done. That said, that motion, unless it's reconsidered in 2026, that would come forward again because council hasn't reconsidered that. So just so that we're clear on what would happen there.
Follow on?
Thank you. So I would be looking for a possible prioritization of the projects, not that, and considering when I look through the justifications, they're not all urgent. So the urgent ones, of course, need to be addressed, but if there are some maybe that our manager of roads could help us prioritize, that would be helpful. And those could be pushed out to 2026.
CEO Schmidt?
So through you, Mayor Cogman, to Councillor Moore. So if I understand correctly, you'd like to actually review the roads infrastructure projects that are in 2025. Now, are you asking to review all the projects or just the projects that have a tax component, funding component with them? So it's the latter of the two. So I think we do have Manager Ha and Manager Eberhard here that can help walk us through that discussion. And maybe what we can do is review each of those projects, or as you mentioned, the ones that are tax funded, and they can provide some background, and council could ask some questions as to priority and so forth. That's okay. I'll get out of your way.
Manager Eberhard?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through yourself to Councillor Moore. Yeah, no problem. We'd be happy to walk through some of these projects with you. We have looked internally and seen which ones would be potential candidates for deferral. If you want, we can start with what we professionally think, or if you want to just go one by one, win your hands.
Councillor Moore?
Thank you. I'm going to go one by one. This is an important budget, and unfortunately, it's going to take a little bit of time to work through this, but I appreciate all your help.
Manager Eberhard?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through yourself to the rest of the council. Okay, so then we start on the first page here of the proposed capital budget. The first tax-supported project that we are looking at here would be 2021-08, which is Peter Street, from Amelia to Yonge Street North. This $100,000 that we've proposed here is for design work with construction to follow in 2026. We find it, we understood that it's pertinent to have shovel-ready projects. There is opportunity sometimes for grant funding from the provincial and from the federal level for shovel-ready projects or construction-ready projects. If that is the case, that this would be a project that we could be applying for a grant, and if not, then we'd be looking to fund this project ourselves in 2026. This project here, as I mentioned, is for the urbanization of Peter Street, so we'll include curbs, sidewalks, upgrading that road from kind of a semi-urban cross-section to a full urbanized cross-section, storm sewers throughout that area as well, and yeah, more or less a urbanized cross-section.
Counselor Moore?
Thank you. So would we be deferring then the $100,000 or the $1,250,000? Or sorry, the $250,000. I'm not following the math on here.
Manager Everhart?
Thank you, Mayor Colgan, through yourself too, Council Moore. So for the 2025 request, all we requested for Peter Street is $100,000. We have additional funding request in 2026, but right now it's just $100,000 that we've requested for part of the 2025 budget.
Counselor Moore?
Thank you. Can you explain the Canada Community Building Fund for me, please? Is that what that stands for?
I'll defer to Director Bedard.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and through you to Councillor Moore. So the Canada Community Building Fund was formerly known as gas tax. So that is revenues distributed through AMO to municipalities that are collected at the federal government.
Deputy Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And on this, do you have, like, I'm familiar with Peter Street, but I don't know what the rating would be as far as the road surface is concerned. I believe there are sidewalks there. So we're talking about upgrading a road to an urban standard. And I'm just wondering, given the character of that road, older homes, it's an older established neighborhood, whether or not, and I have to agree with Councillor Moore that this might be something that put off, given that the condition of the road is not what is precipitating us urbanizing this stretch of roadway. Is that correct? Or does the roadway itself fail to meet our standards as far as road need study is concerned, like asphalt's all broken, cracks in the road, potholes, that kind of thing?
Manager Everhart?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through yourself to the Deputy Mayor. That road currently is a 24 PCI, so it's a 0 to 100 scale. PCI, sorry, I should say, stands for Pavement Condition Index. 100 being in great shape, brand new road, 1 being almost untravelable. So that's a 24 PCI, so we do have alligator cracking on that road, but you are correct. It is a semi-urban, I would say, cross-section right now with older homes. There is sidewalk right now. There is no defined boulevard, or sorry, there's no defined curbs along that stretch as well. So the forethought, and not in detailed design right now, but the forethought would be looking similar to Kerr Street east of Shaw or something along those designs where we have done the urbanization.
Counselor Moore? Okay. And so you'd like to continue?
Oh, yes, please. Continue.
Thank you. The next project that is tax funded would be 2025-75, which is Floss Road 3 West from Phelpston Road eastwardly, 750 meters easterly. That project is for a hard surface conversion. We have completed some work here this past summer, 2024, along Floss Road 3. This would be an extension of those works and to upgrade the segment that is currently gravel to hard surface. That road is proposed as a double surface treatment. And in our opinion, if that would be a road that you are looking to push out potentially or defer a year, that would probably be our top candidate, as right now it's in good condition. It's a gravel road. And the deferral of the hard surface treatment would not negatively impact that road.
Counselor Moore?
Thank you. If you could help me just a little and refer to the page of the budget or what, because I'm going back and forth trying to follow and it's a bit hard. Please. And
Sorry.
is it possible that we do, if we vote on these changes at the end, or would you prefer that we vote on these as each one is discussed?
Obviously at the discretion, if we're looking to change the overall budget impact to get an idea of how much we could defer without negatively impacting a work plan, we could kind of go through them, get an idea, and then amend at the end the entire number appropriately. Thank you. Manager Everhart?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through yourself to the rest of council. Apologies, yeah, I'm speaking about project 2025-75, page 257 in your workbooks, or if you're just looking at the overall, it would be page 227. So either 257 for the specific project justification, or 227 if you're looking at the fulsome list.
Manager Everhart?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through the rest of council, was there any questions on floss 3 in that proposed work, or I can just kind of keep going through the list if you wish? Yeah, okay. The next project here, that's tax supported is Walt Road, so 2025-74. And that can be also found in your books here for the justification on page 256. The proposal for this road here is a pulverize, adding granular M from our township-owned pit, and then double surface treatment on Walt Road from Old Second South to Russell Road. As mentioned, the road's in very poor condition. It's a lot of alligator cracking. It's a surface treated road right now, but it's a 16 PCI, so again, in pretty poor condition. I believe that is the middle photo there up on the screen as well.
Specific questions on Deputy Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I don't anticipate we'd have any kind of numbers for traffic flow on there because it's kind of like Walt Road doesn't really go anywhere. It just kind of joins the old, a couple of roads together. So I'm just wondering, do we have any idea on when it was last done or whether this can wait till next year, I guess? I'm just looking at the number of vehicles that would actually travel that stretch of roadway. I don't know how high it would be, but it does connect two roads that are well traveled. So I'm just wondering about that.
Manager Everhart?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through yourself to the Deputy Mayor. I don't have traffic volumes for that specific road in front of me right now. I definitely can obtain that data and get back to you on that. But knowing with the location of that road right now, correct, it is a low volume road. But with Midhurst Heights development going through there and the expansion, that road will see significant more traffic. Potentially, yes, in 2025, but given the very low PCI of 16 PCI, we thought it was pertinent to include within the 2025 budget.
We'll continue on.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. The next road we will be looking at will be Russell Road, so 2025-73. Sorry, my apologies. Is Rainbow Valley Road, sorry, from Morin Street to County Road 27, so 2025-73. And that page where the justification can be found on page 255. This project here is for the pulverize and pave of Rainbow Valley Road West from Morin Street to County Road 27. Currently, it is a 45 PCI. We've completed a similar treatment there on Floss Road 3, which is the next concession north this past summer, where we have upgraded that road from a surface treated road to a paved road, and we're proposing, and that's for the Apto Estates in there. That does that first few 100-meter section, does see the bulk of the traffic traveling across Rainbow Valley Road and northerly there, as I mentioned, on Floss Road 3 West. So that would be the proposal here. Currently, this road is a 45 PCI, and it is a higher PCI than some of our other roads. It does have some surface distresses and some base repairs that we'd be looking to include, so that's why we've outlined pulverize and a pave for this road segment.
Next one.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. The next road we will be looking at is Russell Road, so 2025 dash 71. That road can be found in the justification for this road can be found on page 253. This road here from Forbes to Doran, it is in very poor shape. This would be one of our highest priority roads here, just due to the condition that it's in right now. We feel that if we do not address this in 2025, we have a chance of losing that road and some severe liability coming through that if we do not do anything. There's severe rutting. There is potholing. It's alligator cracked. It really does need a surface. It does need attention. Understanding that in the coming years, which we don't have, the date is TBD right now still, there will be upgrades to this road as part of the development of Midhurst Heights. However, we're in a bit of a difficult situation here where we feel from a public safety perspective that we need to address that road before any kind of development work goes through there or upgrades to that road. So again, we're outlining for a pulverized granular lime from our pit and a one lift of 70 mils asphalt on that road to get us through those few years.
One.
The next road here that we will discuss is Old Second North from Horseshoe Valley to Floss Road 4 East. We have proposed this project in 2 phases. So the first phase here will be from Horseshoe Valley Road northerly to Matheson Road, which is about the halfway mark between Horseshoe and Floss Road 4. Again, this road is a surface treated road, but we are, you know what, I apologize, I didn't reference the page here. Sorry, give me 2 seconds. The page in your binders here for the project justification would be 251. So sorry, as I was saying, this is a surface treated road. Again, we are, the road's in very poor condition. It's a 21 PCI, which as per the ASTM's rating schedule is a very poor road. That's a failed road. So again, we're looking to pulverize, add granular M, and pave on this road. And again, I have mentioned that we are looking to upgrade this road from a surface treated road to a paved road due to the volume that traffic that experiences on that road experiences, as well as the curvature of the road. There's quite a few vertical crests on that road that is difficult on surface treated. So we've proposed for an asphalt road here.
Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And the funding for this is 2025 and 2026. So what are you proposing then for 2026 on the same road? Thank you.
Manager Eberhard?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through yourself too, Councillor Moore. So yeah, we've decided to phase this project with budgets in mind, but also knowing that we have to look to address this section in 2025. So the proposal is for 2025 start at Horseshoe Valley Road and go to Matheson. In 2026, Matheson continue north up to Floss Road 4. We've had to have a very temporary repair completed just at just north of Horseshoe Valley Road on Old Second Road or Old Second Road North there. That's just to get us through the winter, but it's really not going to hold for too long. So that's why we proposed to start at the southern end, work our way north, and that's phased in two years.
On to the next one. Deputy Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And just before we proceed any further, on these particular roadways that are coming from the Canada Community Building Fund, and I'm just looking at some of them, the money's coming from there. If one was either deferred or if one was solely from one area, if it was pushed, could the community funding portion be utilized on another project? I guess that would be my question in the short term.
Director Bedard?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Deputy Cabral. Your assumption is correct. We're given an allotment of money, we'll say. And if a project is originally intended to be funded through through the Canada Community Building Fund or through OSIF, the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund, that's another grant. If one of those projects were deferred, that would free up that funding to be used on another project in the current year. So we, and just to build on Manager Eberhard's presentation, that the projects he ran through you are based on the original budget that was presented to you. The project funding for a number of these projects has changed when we consider scenario 1, 2, and 3 that were presented to bring down the tax impact. So if a number of these projects were deferred, we would have to look at internally reallocating that pool of money to bring that tax rate down. But again, if a project was deferred one way or another, we would look to use that grant to offset a tax impact elsewhere, so that we would realize that decrease in the tax levy.
Next project.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. For road supported, or sorry, for tax supported projects, that's all that we have right now. As Director Bedard indicated though, some of the projects that are OCIF or other contributions funded, we could look at those ones as well and reallocate some of those funds. So if there's a specific project that you would like any further details on, I'm happy to share.
Counselor Fisher?
If you could go through the funding for 249 and 250 in Midhurst, how do we intend to pay for that one?
Manager Eberhard?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through yourself to Councillor Fisher. So yes, this project is broken down into two projects. The rationale behind that is that there is no top lift of asphalt as part of the extension of Midvis Crescent or Midvis Court. So we have security still with the developer there, and that's what will be funding that top lift of asphalt from the end of the existing section, which is about 220 meters east of Frid, all the way to the end of that roundabout. And then while we're there, we're also going to be resurfacing the original section of Midvis Court, which is from Frid to 220 meters east. So we have two different funding sources for that project, so that's why we've broken up between the two.
Follow on?
So it's safe to say it won't be affecting the tax base then because of the funding source.
Manager Eberhard?
I would clarify that the section east of 220 meters east of Frid will not affect the tax base. The other project, which is from Frid to 220 meters east, that we do not have securities for, that is township to complete those works for. That is coming from the Canada Community Building Fund, which, as Director Bedard indicated, could be reallocated for tax supported projects or not then.
Follow on?
It would seem to me you can't do one project without doing the other, though. They're sort of together, correct?
Manager Eberhard?
Leveraging economies, thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through yourself to Councillor Fisher. Leveraging economies of scale, I would recommend to do them at the same time.
Counselor Moore?
So when I look at the projects then that you've outlined, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 that are that have tax supported components. The one that I'm concerned, or not concerned, but I have a question about is the first one, the 2021-08. If the Canada Community Building Fund has $1 million in it for 2026, is that something that can be reallocated now and leave these other projects as is and then sort of move that money?
Manager Eberhard?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I may defer a portion of this to Director Bedard, but from my understanding, we would not be able to allocate money that we have for 2026 into projects that are for 2024, but I'll defer here to Director Bedard.
Director Bedard?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Councillor Moore. If we were looking to defer the project to 2026, we could fund that portion out of the grant for 2026 that we will receive. I think that was hopefully what you were intending to hear.
Counselor Moore?
Thank you. I apologize. This is going to be a little tedious today. So the first then 4 projects that were identified potentially could be deferred. The two that I'm hearing from you that are priorities, the 2025-71 related to public safety, that absolutely needs to be done. And 2025-69, again, related to public safety, both have to be done. Sort of no choice for those. The other four then, is it possible to defer those? And I think the total, we would be looking at 200, 300, just under $400,000 for those four, tax supported.
Director Eberhard.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through yourself to Councillor Moore. My recommendation would be Floss Road 3 West, which is 2025-75 as the first candidate for if deferral is needed here. That'd be my first candidate because, like I said, it's a gravel road right now, and deferring that will not affect the driving surface or the wear and course of that road, and can be covered under any operating cost for any gravel resurfacing or reshaping of that road. The next project that I would recommend, in my honest opinion, would be 2026-16, which is Rosewood Ave, and I have not touched on this project because it wasn't tax supported. So I'll pull up which page that is on. Sorry, that's for page 259 of the justification. This project is from Idlewood to Silverwood. It'd be a similar treatment that we've completed this past summer in some of the subdivision roads there in Midhurst already, such as Idlewood and Noraline, where we have milled 50 millimeters of top lift asphalt and relayed 50 millimeters. This road's currently a 58 PCI. We feel it would be appropriate to include it within the 2025 budget. However, it is not a public safety concern at this point, but the roads, some of the old subdivisions there within Midhurst are starting to show deterioration. They are starting to show shrinkage, cracking. They are starting to show some alligator cack around the manholes. So we feel it would be pertinent to include, but from a public safety perspective, no, I think that would be a second candidate for deferral.
Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I just have a question with respect to Floss Road 3 West. And the reason I bring this up is we're talking about a conversion from gravel to pavement. And I can't imagine a whole lot of people would even use Floss Road 3 West because it really only goes from Highway 27 to Phelpston Road. So to my way of thinking, the only people it's going to be servicing is the people who actually live on the road, which would be not much different, in my opinion, from Floss Road 3 West or east on the other side, which is a dead end. So I'm kind of struggling with that one being considered a priority for conversion to hardtop. Oh, I know it's not, but it's on here. I can think of something like Floss Road 10 West that joins 93 and Scarlet Road. So I'm just wondering about that one in general, to be honest with you.
Director Eberhard.
Manager Eberhard. Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through yourself to the deputy mayor. Yeah, you are correct. That road has a not the highest AADT of our gravel roads. However, we thought it would be important to include that, or one of our candidates to include that, because it would connect a hard surface road to a hard surface road. So right now we have to send the grader out. We have to send different pieces of equipment to treat just a 750 meter stretch of road. And we feel that the traffic volumes would increase along that stretch of road if it was a hard surfaced road, because I believe the road further south there, Rainbow Valley Road, would take most of that traffic coming out of Apto Estates, and if that road were to be hard surface all the way across, we feel that the AADT would increase from what it is now. That said, it is a hard surface conversion, so we don't feel any concerns if that would be deferred.
Follow on.
Yeah, thank you. And I do appreciate that answer. However, I can certainly think of a number of other locations that would be better suited to exactly what you just described. Once again, looking at Floss Road 10 West between Highway 93 and Scarlet Road. However, I do recall that there was a motion put forth before at council to prioritize and create some kind of a background list of roads that were gravel to prioritize them to for conversion down the road. I'm hoping someone else on council can kind of remember us putting that forward. I don't know if that was ever done, but I would suggest to you that this particular stretch might not necessarily make it to the top of that list. So I would like to see maybe that motion bring forth what it was supposed to do, which was a prioritization of gravel to hardtop conversions, because that's something that's been on council's mind for some time, the last 2 years. So, and I apologize, it's during budget, but it's tweaking my memory. It's making me think about some of the gravel road conversions that we've done. I can assure you that the traffic on Floss Road 10 West is in excess of 200 to 300 cars now. And I think when we first talked about the gravel road conversion there, we were being told that it was 50 or 60 cars a day. I would like to see maybe in the springtime a traffic count done there again on a Friday or a Saturday. That would be very interesting in comparison to what we used to have. Thanks.
Councillor Thompson and then Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Just a comment about the gravel roads and then a question for Manager Eberhart. I remember the conversation about gravel roads last year because we added a road to be paved that wasn't identified by council. And to Deputy Mayor Cabral's comments is that we had kind of asked for some kind of prioritization. So I couldn't put a fringe road on that just to get paved if I had the votes that could be done. So I'm all in favor of finding a way to get that prioritized. Now, my question to Manager Eberhart was, we've heard about public safety concerns, that some of these roads are a public safety concern. And it alarms me that we're here at budget time talking about this, that we keep seeming to find these roads to push them off until they're a public safety concern. And I'm in favor of getting them paved and repaired before that occurs, not just because of the liability. I think our residents deserve a better standard than that. I know there's roads in my ward that are public safety concerns. Councillor Moore said that we can't remove the ones that are public safety concerns, but I think that we've done that in the past. So I would hope that all members of council would have that same kind of attitude and perspective of our township. We should not be a township that are only prioritizing the ones that are public safety concerns. Thank you.
Councillor Fisher.
I think we're prioritizing what needs to be done over just spending money. However, I would just like to say I know in my ward, Walt, that's not a road that needs to be done right away, and it's certainly not a safety concern. And I appreciate Manager Eberhard talking about Rosewood. Although I would love to have it done, it's within my neighborhood. It certainly can be deferred. The only one, and I know it's seeing more and more traffic, and I travel on it daily, is Russell Road to Doran. That's certainly a safety concern, and I can attest to the poor condition. When you say that we may lose the road, I think that that's an accurate statement. It is seeing increased traffic, unlike Walt, which is not seeing the traffic as of yet. So I would certainly suggest that Walt be pushed on, Rose would be pushed on, but I would certainly advocate for Russell Road being done to Doran.
Councillor Moore.
Thank you. The only other one I had a question about was Wilson Road, north of 26. Can you just talk to me a little bit about the condition of that road? Thank you.
Manager Eberhard.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. To yourself too, Councillor Moore. Yeah, no problem. So Wilson Drive, you can see that there is a carry forward request or carry forward from 2024, and then also a new request in 2025. Through the design, I believe the original scope was from Henry Road north to north of Binney, which is included within this project. But then we've also added the section further south from Henry to the bridge deck, which is about, I believe, 800 meters or so, or about a kilometer south of Henry Road there. So where we last left off in 2023's project there of resurfacing on Wilson Drive. So right now the road is in very poor shape. So we've outlined some base concerns along the just north of Henry Road at the base of the hill. We've also identified some drainage concerns along that hill. So within that cost as well, we do have curbs outlined for down that hill to funnel and to catch that drainage, that surface drainage, to bring it down to those ditches at the bottom of the hill. Right now, we're seeing a lot of the water run just on the road, which is causing a saturated base and a saturated road structure, which is causing further deterioration in some of the rutting there that you currently see. So that's some of the work that we've outlined there on Wilson Drive, and that's the rationale for why the project has two requests, a carry forward and a 2025 request, is the additional scoping, the additional limits.
Paulin?
Thank you. So what I gather then is you feel that 2 deferrals are possible with no impact to public safety particularly, and really to, worsen the road condition in a way that would make it unsafe. So what I understand then is 2026-16 and 2025-75 to the total of $193,000 can be deferred.
Manager Eberhard?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through yourself to Councilor Moore. Those would be, yes, correct. Those would be my top, our top 2 priority, or lowest on the priority list for deferral, we believe.
Thank you.
Councilor Moore?
Thank you. So I'll move on then to Craig Road, starting at page 264. What we have carryover from 2024, $3,650,000. Is that reconstruction? Is that acquisition? Utilities and infrastructure, it says. Is this all work that will be done in 2025?
Manager Eberhard?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through yourself to Councilor Moore. I do see that there's a few requests, and I do understand there's a few requests for Craig Road. That project is in a has had some work experience to it. We have identified a work plan going forward. Some of it is limited on access to property and property acquisition. So that is where some of the work is phased right now. We are still working actively on design work along both phase 1 and phase 2 of Craig Road, and utility work as well. If there's specifics of the exact project, I may have to defer to.
Councilor Moore?
Thank you. So what I'm seeing though, because it is all split out and it's a very large number, so maybe CAO Schmidt can help me with this. So 3.6 million for the infrastructure piece, utilities, et cetera. And then also another 4.5 million next year. Well, it says carryover with 2 million for this coming year. So actually another 6.5 million, and then another 500,000 in 2025. And so my concern is that all of this is not going to happen next year. So if you could maybe pare it down for me to something that is a bit reasonable. Thank you.
CO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Councilor Moore. So, Councilor Moore, the amount of $3.65 million, I think we had a discussion last council meeting whereby there was an acquisition of property, and that property, we weren't sure at the time of preparation of the budget whether we would have that property in 2024 or 2025. Obviously, with the decision council made, the intent is to obviously spend a good portion of that 3.65 this year, so it won't be carried forward. We're also working on a couple other, I believe there's 5 other properties that we're working on right now and trying to acquire. And so there will be funds needed in 2020, from 2024 to 2025 to make sure that we acquire all the land for Craig Road. So there are a couple other substantial pieces of property that will be likely coming back to council for your approval on once we get to that stage. So the intent is, yes, to spend a large portion of this and also to begin potentially some construction with the acquisition of the recent property. Now provides us with an opportunity to potentially start some construction on that property in 2025. So will we spend it all? I don't know, but the intent is definitely we need to get moving on that project. And, I think you'll see some pretty large expenditures in 2025 as it relates to this project.
Counselor Moore?
Thank you. And I'm hoping then with the delegation, is there something that we can, if our delegation that we do in at Roma, hopefully we can get some of that money back, or hopefully they will continue to contribute in a way that will offset some of that expense.
CEO Schmidt?
So thank you through you, Mayor Coughlin, to Councilor Moore. So Councilor Moore, the Craig Road project is 100% funded from development charges. That being said, obviously, we don't have all those funds in our coffers today, if you will. However, there will be likely some short-term financing that we'll have to engage in the interim until we collect those DCs. But ultimately, the project is to be fully funded from development charges. So the intent is not for the taxpayer to have to pay any of this cost. To your point about the application, we did submit an application, and I can't recall the exact number. I believe it was in the magnitude of possibly up to $20 million, I believe, that we might be eligible for. So fingers crossed, we get some funds. And if we get the 20 million, obviously that will help us move this project that much quicker. So.
Deputy Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and not really off topic, but just looking here at Nursery Road, I'm just curious to know what other means when it comes to the funding source. There's $281,000 for pulverizing and adding granular M and paving, and the source for funding is simply stated as other. I just wanted to know what other actually means. Located it somewhere else in the binder. Thank you.
Counselor Moore?
Thank you. So if there's no questions about Craig Road then, if there's anybody, then I'll move on to my next, which is the community hub. So that's on page 269. And we have allocated 825,000 for 2025 for the community hub. Tree clearing, which has been completed, I think, mostly. Servicing, project management, remaining studies. So I wanted to get a sense, maybe if you could speak to that, CEO Schmidt.
CEO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through you to Councilor Moore. So it's my understanding, Councilor Moore, that of the 825,000, the intent is to spend approximately $600,000 on the main entrance into the site. So although you have the EMS facility and the fire station currently being constructed, there needs to be a main entrance constructed. And so the idea is that main entrance would be constructed in 2025. Roughly in the magnitude of $600,000 is the provision that, or the budget number we've come up with. And then the remaining $225,000 has been allocated towards the stage 2 study, which council or staff will be coming forward in the spring as directed by council for your consideration to move forward with stage 2 of the stage gated process. If you recall, that was deferred to early spring.
Counselor Fisher?
So I guess I just have to question it. We don't have an exact design yet for the hub. We're spending 600,000 on an entrance. I'm just wondering if we can defer this as well.
CEO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mayor Coggan, through to Councillor Fisher. Councillor Fisher, there's no current entrance to the fire station and or the EMS station. And so the idea is to build an entrance off of Snow Valley, which would be stopped essentially, and the road would go 90 degrees to the west to allow for an entrance to the EMS site and to the fire station. So the idea is not to build the full entrance into the community hub, if you will. It would be to kind of, I don't know how far in, to be honest with you. I don't have manager Harvey here who's kind of leading the project, but the idea is to build a stub off of Snow Valley, which then would have a direct access to the EMS post and to the fire station. So with those two facilities being built, it's critical. We need access off of Snow Valley. So it is critical to have that built in 2025.
Counselor Fisher?
Thank you for clarifying. I didn't realize it was for all three places.
Counselor Moore?
Thank you. So with that, I'll move on to page 272, which is Homer Barrett Park washroom facilities. Carryover from 2024. I would be looking to move this out to 2026. I would ask CAO Schmidt do you see an issue with deferring that?
Director Culver?
Thank you, Mayor Colligan. So just so I'm clear, the question is whether we can move the $200,000 into 2026. So basically what that would do is just postpone the construction of the washroom for another year. We've just recently secured and engaged the landscape architect to do the design work that council approved this year, which will carry over into next year. So deferral simply means we won't start until 1 year from until 2026.
Counselor Moore?
Thank you. Director Culver, are you saying that we don't have a final design then for that project right now?
Director Culver?
Through you, Mayor Coughlin, no, through procurement, it took some time to get the landscape architecture on board. That's recently been done, and we're just about to start on that process, which will include the design work and all of the public engagement that was discussed in the Homer Barrett placemaking approach.
Follow on?
So with that and knowing how long things take to to get done and then come back to council for some sort of approval, we would be looking at 2026 in all likelihood anyway.
Director Culver?
Through you, Mayor Coughlin, for completion for sure. We would not be able to be completed until 2026. It's really about construction start, which would be delayed because we wouldn't be able to start the project until we had funding secured. So that start would not occur until 2026.
Deputy Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Coggan. I'm just curious here because it's coming from the DC reserves. Pushing this into 2026 would really not have an impact on our tax situation this particular year. And I will admit it's a project that's from 2020. And I'm understanding it's going to contain change rooms as well. So while I can see maybe we're not ready to proceed, I don't see any value in necessarily removing it from this particular budget. However, I do want some kind of an idea because there's a lot of projects that are coming from DC reserve funds and things like that. What kind of balances we have in there and if they're in a position to absorb all this, and if they are, what's going to be left over for future projects. So I don't know if that's something that that can be provided, or I also noticed on a couple of other pages in the past, and I looked back to 2021, 2022, 2023, most of our vehicles were paid for. And I notice in this particular budget, they're all debentured. The ones that I kind of looked at real quick, the value was in the neighborhood of, excuse me one second, I think $1.1 million for basically vehicles, which included a pumper truck for the fire department at 600,000. But when I took that out and I took the vacuum sweeper out, we were still about $500,000 that I guess we're going to be boring. So what would the cost be to carry that? Because at some point in time, we end up having to pay all that back. So I just kind of trying to wrap my head around why this year is different from previous years where we, basically owned our assets right from the get-go.
Director Bedard?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Deputy Cabral, the first question around available DC balances, that will be coming to council early next year. I believe Councilor Alexander's motion with respect to our balances and what we project collection in the future to be, so that information will be forthcoming to council. With respect to how we are financing vehicles moving forward, so it says debenture on the detailed sheet here. Really, that represents internal financing. So when we look at this capital budget and how we were financing the capital budget in entirety, knowing that we had pressures related to roads, to manage our tax increase and keep that down to the lowest that we felt possible, we had to reallocate a lot of taxation funding that was previously on fleet to roads and the building facility condition assessment. So the money that we were previously spending on fleet, we reallocated to those projects. And the fleet that we've indicated for debenture, that'll be our internal borrowing. That'll establish the internal borrowing that we've talked about at the last council meeting. And really the intent is we keep in our fleet for an average of almost 13 years. We wouldn't look to internal borrow for 13 years. We look to internal borrow for probably 4 years. So we would pay that asset off. We'd pay ourselves off within 4 years. And once we have that built in, we would continue to have that funding for every asset. And instead of paying cash for it, we kind of look at it as we're trying to pay the asset off over its useful life. Granted, we're not going to pay it off over 13 years. We're going to accelerate that over 4 or 5 years. It's more in line with we have to put that priority on roads, which is what we've done to meet the council road resurfacing target. The result of meeting that target and reallocating funding to roads is we need to look at other avenues for funding our other assets, and internal borrowing for some of our fleet is the way we've looked to balance the needs.
Follow on?
Thank you, Director Bedard. I do appreciate that. But in my mind, it's still $500,000 outside of the pumper and the sweeper that it's still sitting there. It's not like in past we managed to pay it. As a matter of fact, and this would be directed to CAO Schmidt. As I recall, we had discussion some time ago where we would build in a component actually to kind of build up a bit of a fund to buy replacement vehicles. I don't know if you recall that, but I remembered having a bit of a discussion with you. This could have been probably 3 or 4 years ago when we were looking at replacing vehicles. I don't see that being able to be accomplished going forward with the fashion that now we're basically self-financing these vehicles going forward. And it's not that I have a huge issue with it. It's just that it's still kind of like looking to tomorrow to pay for today.
CAO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you, Deputy Mayor Cabral. So I can speak to the reserve piece, I think. So you're right. I believe if I recall, what we were talking about is usually when we replace our assets, or sell our assets, if you will, declare them as surplus, what we've been doing is essentially those surplus funds that we get from the asset, we place in a reserve, and then we use those funds for future replacement of fleet and or equipment. In many years past, we were actually budgeting for the for the trade-in, which in some cases was actually putting us in a worse off position because although we had budget for a trade-in of $25,000, let's say, for a vehicle, and we only got 5, we're in a shortfall of 20 grand. So, we took that out and we took the position that any basically funds that we got for the sale of an asset or a fleet and equipment was put into a reserve, which would be used for the future replacement of that asset. As it relates to the funding mechanism that's being proposed for 2025, it is slightly different, obviously, than what we've been doing in the past. And as Director Bedard had mentioned, in order to try to ensure that we could, satisfy council's direction with regards to the investment in our roads, we had to transfer some of that tax supported funding to our roads. Which unfortunately, I guess, means that our fleet had to find a different funding source, which again, I won't go through the format that Director Bedard has mentioned, but again, it is internal financing. And we have done internal financing for many years. Members of council may not be aware of that, but it has been done over the course of probably at least 10 years anyways that I can speak to.
Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Moving on then to Recreation Parks and Facilities, the Facility Condition Assessment Program that we have for 2025 at $610,000, fully tax supported. Can you maybe, Director Culver, speak to what those improvements will look like? There is a note that there is a priority list of repairs to the various facilities. Maybe you could speak to that.
Director Culver?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I'm going to refer to Manager Dean to support this question.
Oh, sorry.
Manager Dean?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through yourself to Councillor Moore and the rest of council. So that is correct. We do have a list for each facility that, so we do have the facility assessments for each facility. And within that, there is kind of short-term, longer-term, farther out term, so end-of-life term priorities within each of those facilities. Some of them are more structural or could have a bigger impact on a building. For example, if it was piping in the building or a roof on the building, and some of it is more aesthetic in terms of end of life or wear and tear and where they would expect that to be replaced. So the facility assessment program, when it assesses the facilities, it looks at them in terms of what condition they're in at the date of assessment and keeping them at least in that condition and or better over the term of the life. Or if there was a building that they deemed kind of end of life, which we didn't have in any of our buildings, but it would also go through that process. So it's not replacing everything in the building to get it up to snuff. It's looking at the condition that it's at currently and keeping it in that and or better condition so that it doesn't deteriorate. So that's kind of how the facility assessment goes through the process. So within those dollars for our facility, so it is looking at flooring, roofing. Sorry, I'm just going through my different line items here. So flooring and roofing in facilities, looking at a roof substructure in one of our facilities. So kind of not a full replacement of a roof, but a minor repair and or replacement of the roof. Lighting, some minor east troughs and replacements of some plumbing parts, as well as, again, some further flooring and lighting within the arena. So so for example, the Elmville Community Hall and the Knox building, there is roofing components that are required in those buildings. Within the Midhurst Community Center, there is a door, so the exterior door. Within the Anton Mills facility, as we previously discussed around some of the discussions about Anton Mills, there is the flooring within the Anton Mills facility. Within the arena, there is flooring within the arena, as well as lighting upgrades. And those lighting upgrades would specifically focus on the lighting over the ice pad of the arena for that component of it. And then there is some doors at a fire hall. And yes, so the others are essentially some of our overhead doors at the fire hall. So the doors for the fire trucks.
Following?
Thank you. CEO Schmidt, can you speak to the $610,000? It's referred to as fully tax supported, but then 2026, 2027 for the other 8 years after, it's all under debenture.
Director Bedard?
Thank you, Mayor Colgan, through you to Councillor Moore. With respect to the future years, if this is projects indicated as being debenture funded, that would have to be restated to show it's being funded from taxation. And again, it speaks to this program as well as our roads program, something we do on that annual basis. We really need to start funding that from taxation. So if again, if it's funded from a different source in the future, my apologies, it should be taxation.
I have Councillor Alexander and then Councillor Thompson. Councillor Thompson?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So through the chair to Manager Dean. So during our one-on-one time, I came in and actually asked a lot of these questions to help me understand. And on one of these public buildings, there was a cracked foundation. I don't remember if you remember the conversation. And I had suggested we perhaps defer it. Would that be a possibility? Can you share with council your answer to me, if you remember it?
Manager Dean?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and through yourself to Councillor Thompson. So I believe that question would be in regards to the Minnesing Community Hall and or the Elmville Library. We do have separate requests in for foundation repairs for both of those. So again, due to the age of most of our community halls, a lot of them are old schoolhouses and or old community centers. So they are starting to see age deterioration to the structure of the building. So within the foundation, we are seeing cracks within foundations of certain of our buildings. So can cause interior water damage. So some of those, the water damage can then cause damage to the rooms within the interior. So whether it be the drywall, the carpet, and the structures and or amenities within those buildings, as well as leading to air quality and mold issues within those buildings. If the water continues, it can further deteriorate other components of the building.
Follow on?
And correct me if I'm wrong, you did mention that once the water's in there and mold and the deterioration, that there is a real possibility that we have to condemn these buildings and the buildings would have to be shut down.
Manager Dean?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through yourself to Councillor Thompson. If they continued not to be dealt with, they would continue to cause further and further issues. Mold remediation, there's various levels of mold remediation. So the worst case of mold remediation is it's truly in kind of the bones of the wood and or the bones of the material of the building.
Councillor Garwood?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Manager Dean on the same topic. Scenario 3 outlines the facility condition assessment program being reduced to $210,000 from $610,000. So obviously a $400,000 difference there. I think I asked a similar question earlier on in our public budget meetings here, but can you just speak to the dwindling of that program and I guess the scope that would associate it? I know you understand that you just outlined what would be done with that 610, but it's already outlined as a proposed reduction as it is.
Manager Dean? Or Director Culver?
I think, sorry, for clarity, I think just to make sure we're all on the same page, the building condition assessment or the facility condition assessment line would actually reduce $200,000 to 600 and something from its previous number in order to meet one of the scenario objectives. So it was reduced. It was reduced based on staff's assessment of what could be deferred without harming the overall facility condition assessment progress and our attempts to maintain the facilities.
Some more?
Thank you. That was really my point too, is that if we do go with the third scenario, that you feel some of that work wouldn't be able to be done next year anyway, because it is a really long list, and that you were feeling comfortable deferring out to 2026.
Director Culver?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So through you, what I would be comfortable saying is that staff have reviewed the list and are comfortable deferring what has been proposed in terms of meeting the scenario 3 objective. Further than that, it starts to get very much more troubling about where we might land in the future with some of these facility conditions.
Counselor Moore?
Thank you. Okay, so moving on then to Public Works. Particularly project number 2020-39. And this has been hanging around for quite a while, but it is again asking for a sidewalk plow replacement. Am I speaking to you, CAO Schmidt, about the Public Works, or am I okay with Mr. Eberhart? Okay, all right, and Scott. So I wanted to ask about the sidewalk plow, how necessary you feel that is. I wanted to ask about, on page 290 is a 2014 tandem snow plow as well, but on 289, let me just get my notes here. 283, page 283 and 290, I have is the same thing. So I just need clarification on page 283, which is oh, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Just one sec. So we could speak maybe to 290 and the 2014 tandem snow plow, as well as the sidewalk plow. And is it both your sense that they are completely at their end of life, cannot go another season?
Manager Eberhart?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through yourself too, Councilor Moore. Yeah, I can walk you through the sidewalk plow first. I'll start with here. So 281 page. So this is a replacement of our 2012 sidewalk plow. These machines go through quite a bit over the winter months, as you can imagine. Last year, so we currently have 4 in our fleet right now. We are taking on, as you know, quite a few new sidewalks with the development of Vesper Valley, which we have just taken on a partial assumption of, as well as we are maintaining Midhurst Valley behind our yard 1 there. And we are maintaining those sidewalks as well. So we've added quite a few kilometers to our sidewalks. With that, we did replace 1 machine last year. However, we just received that, or sorry, this year, I should say, we just received that machine this year. There was times last year where we had to rent a machine that we were so that we were did not have a machine up and running. Some of these machines come from Europe, or their parts are from Europe or the States, and the lead time sometimes for some of these parts are quite exaggerated. So I would say that this is a necessity based off the condition of our sidewalk inventory right now. And sorry, would you like me to go to the follow on then?
Yes, please.
Sure. So in the budget here, I'll just kind of clarify a little bit too, that there is 2 trucks, and one of them has already been awarded. It was a 2024 project, and it has been awarded. We are just awaiting delivery of that truck. That's the one of the tandem axles there. That is project number, apologies. That is 2023-02. That project has already been awarded, so I'll speak to then 2024-10, which is the replacement of tandem number 32. So in our inventory right now, we have 11 tandems and 2 single axle trucks. The life cycle of those trucks is typically around a 10-year life cycle for those trucks. We use them year round. In the summertime, they are used for ditching, hauling gravel, watering roads, etc. Wintertime, they're set for winter maintenance. The lead time for building one of these, we awarded one earlier this year. I believe it was in February or so, and we are not seeing that truck until March of 2025. So the lead time of these vehicles is over a year. So with that, we typically have been requesting a vehicle, a new tandem or single axle per year, just to stay up to date on our fleet and on our ensuring that we have the resources to complete the winter maintenance. We do not have a third party contractor that completes road maintenance of our majority of 99.9% of our roads. So we really don't have a fallback plan if we have multiple vehicles down.
Deputy Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I just want to step back to the sidewalk plow for a moment. I see up here it says plow number 40, and I was overlooking 2023s, and there was an ask for a little over 100 and some odd $1,000. And I want to know, I guess, what we did, because I think that was for plow number 40 as well. And the comments there were that we were going to be looking for smaller, cheaper, dual-purpose vehicles that could be utilized in both the summer and winter. So I'm kind of wondering what happened. Did we do that? Was it just an exercise to find out what was appropriate? I have last year's spreadsheet up here, but I have to apologize. I don't have that particular ask right in front of me, but if Councillor Moore wants to continue her discussion, I'd like to bring it up just so that we can verify what it was that we did and whether we got something for that money or whether we're looking at getting another plow, or is this the same plow? I'm a bit confused on that.
Manager Everhart?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through yourself to the deputy mayor. We did ask for a sidewalk plow, I believe I believe it was $25,000 we asked for in 2023. And that was to review and demo a few different models to know what would work best for our needs. And then in 2024's budget, I believe the ask was a $250,000, if I recall correctly, ask. And that was to purchase a machine, which we have purchased and we have just taken possession of maybe a month or two ago now. So this is a new ask as well. So that, if that clarifies your
Yes,
point.
it does. Thank you. I
Thank
just
you.
didn't know whether we actually got something for that money or whether this was a subsequent ask and it was just an exercise to see what we wanted to do that we spent money on. Thank you.
Councillor Fisher?
Through you to Manager Epperhard. I'm just looking at 2025-55. The looks like a 2012 replacement. 2012, I think it's an F450 dump box truck for 85,000. Page 297.
Manager Everhart?
Yeah. So I'm just looking at this. Would it be better, because it looks like it's used for winter plowing, but also I'm assuming you're utilizing the dump box of the truck. First of all, I don't think we'd buy an F450 for $85,000. It seems like it's too good a price, actually. But I wonder if it'd be more cost effective to buy a 2,500 ton and a dump trailer. Would that be maybe a better solution? I also notice, if just as a side note, some of the justification here, score of 28, you give the exact kilometers, but if I go over to page 296, I notice you have the exact same, it's almost like a cut and paste, the exact same kilometers for 25-54. So are those the exact kilometers, or maybe there's a duplication in justification?
Manager Everhart?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through yourselves to Councillor Fisher. I'm actually going to defer this to Parks and Rec. That's their request for this project. So I will be deferring this one to Manager Dean or to Director Culver. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Sorry, did you? Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through yourself to Councillor Fisher. I'm gonna start with the second question because I might need you to repeat some of the first part. So 296, that is actually a new vehicle. So there's a typo in the bottom section of it. So that is actually a new vehicle. So when we did have a position added to the department, in the past, there was not a vehicle purchased for that position, as they were sharing vehicles at the time, but within our department and the amount of back and forth. So there is a request for that. So that is a new vehicle, the 3/4 ton with truck cap. So that's a new request. For the replacement of the dump box truck. So that would be replacing an older vehicle. Dump box. And within that, we've discussed within our department, it could be, it is a 450 right now. It could be a 350 for the demands of the department. The dump box is preferred in our department based on our operators don't always have the higher license to trailer with bigger trailers and bigger loads within the trailer. So the dump box is preferred for that, kind of for the duties they do, as well as for example, fall cleanup, blowing into the back of the truck, and different items. So that was the preferred. I would want to confer kind of more with our parks manager before, stating if a trailer would be exactly correct for that need.
Counselor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I just want to back up then, please, up to Public Works. Is it then, because we do have a new sidewalk plow, can we defer the sidewalk plow to next budget? But I also want to ask CAO Schmidt a question about unassumed roads. And we do have some agreements with developers that we are plowing their sidewalks, their roads. And I want to make sure that we're being compensated properly for the cost of our equipment and our labor, which we are in short supply of. I don't know that I've ever seen an agreement with a reciprocal agreement of some sort with a developer.
We'll go to the second part first, CEO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Councillor Moore. Councillor Moore, I'll try to answer this question. I may need some assistance here. My understanding is that's usually typically arranged for in the subdivision agreement or in a subsequent agreement. So I think there's clauses within our subdivision agreement whereby we would enter into with the developer as to whether they would be providing for that maintenance or whether the township is to provide for that maintenance. And then in turn, if the township does provide for that maintenance, we do invoice the developer on a annual basis, I guess it is. As for the actual details of what we're actually charging, I believe there is a staff rate as well as an equipment rate, but I would definitely have to check for you. I'm not sure, Manager Eberhard or Manager Ha or even Director Heron, whether or not you're aware of, you can add anything to that or no?
Manager Ha?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and to the rest of council. So yeah, typically it's through the subdivision agreement that, so it's not a separate agreement. It's built into the subdivision agreement that we will provide a winter maintenance and bill back at whatever our cost is to provide a per kilometer maintenance with our vehicles, whether it's sidewalks or the maintenance of the roads.
And the first part of the question with the deferral of the snow machine.
Yep, thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through yourself too, Councillor Moore. As mentioned, the one we purchased last year was the newest machine, obviously, and that is the fourth end of our fleet. The rest of our fleet is a 2012, a 2014, and a 2019. This is for the replacement of the 2012 sidewalk plow. I would stress that last year we had to rent a machine from a third-party vendor and from a neighboring municipality just to kind of get us through the winter. With us taking on those extra sidewalks this year, I really think it would be pertinent to include a sidewalk plow for next year's budget.
Counselor Moore?
Thank you.
My apologies. CEO Schmidt has a response to the question.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And again, through you, Mayor Coughlin, to Councilor Moore, just to echo Manager Eberhardt's comments. Again, we can't stress enough that last year we were down to one sidewalk plow at one point for all of the township. We were thankful to our friends to, not the immediate south, but a little bit further south, that actually were able to rent us actually a sidewalk plow to assist us in the time that we needed. So I know there was some concerns, maybe I'll state, from residents in the township that sidewalks weren't being plowed in a timely fashion last year. We were down to one plow at one point. So again, can't stress enough the need for this piece of equipment.
Counselor Moore?
Thank you. And I agree. But for $235,000 per sidewalk plow, and I know that the neighbors south of us contracts out those services. And so we're looking at $470,000 in 2 years for 2 sidewalk plows. I would like to find out what the third party contract price would be for that, for the future. And you know, they do have many pieces of equipment and maybe could service our residents better, really. But I can move on if you'll allow me.
Counselor Moore?
Thank you. So Public Works, still with Public Works, 2025-05 is the replacement of a 2015 pickup truck for $80,000, but it has 138,000 kilometers on it. So maybe you could speak to that one for me, because I know I wouldn't replace a truck at 138,000 kilometers.
Manager Eberhardt?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through yourself to Councillor Moore. I do understand what you're saying. Yeah. We do try to keep an updated fleet, and we try to replace the vehicles at around an approximate 10-year life cycle. This past summer, we had 2 2015 vehicles that both had transmission failures, and then the cost of the vehicle was we decommissioned that vehicle because of that repair cost. So to stay up to date on our fleet, we do look to about a 10-year life cycle cost of that. We do review, or a 10-year, sorry, a life cycle of those. We do review the vehicles that we are asking for each year to see, is it something that could be deferred a year or not as well. This vehicle, yes, it could potentially be deferred, knowing though that if it does have a failure midway through the year, it most likely wouldn't justify the cost to spend multiple thousands of dollars to repair it, and then we may have to come back at budget or in mid-year to potentially replace that vehicle, as I believe we did this past summer.
Counselor Moore?
Thank you. So I would be asking to defer that. I'll move on to Parks and Rec and robotic mowers. Director Culver, maybe you could speak to us a little bit more about robotic mowers, $80,000, and if they are a must-have for next year.
Director Culver?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and through you to Councillor Moore. So first off, I'll note that these are being drawn from development charges, so they don't have an impact on the tax rate. Having said that, what makes them important speaks to some of the program change justifications that were discussed at the last meeting, in so much as trying to manage and maintain over 300 hectares of parkland with limited staff resources. The impact of the robot mowers, based on the demonstration that we conducted this past summer, is about 15 to 30 hours a week, depending on the number of cuts that are done, which can have an impact of up to $5,000 a week in staff time. Not to mention when that staff time is redeployed elsewhere, it's set at a higher value, and they're able to take on more complex tasks than mowing. And so a return on investment for these development charge funded items is approximately a year to 2 years at most.
Counselor Thompson?
Just a follow-up question on the robotic mowers. When I came in on my one-on-one sessions and asked these questions, we are using them currently, and it's been a pretty successful pilot, correct?
Director Culver?
Through you, Mayor, we used them we did a 6-week test. So a supplier was able to provide us with one unit to demonstrate for about 6 weeks. And as mentioned, we saw a labor savings of roughly 30 hours a week based on 2 cuts per week. We also saw increased staff was impressed with the quality that the machines provided. And the ability for us to be able to kind of manage them according to weather, other operations that needed like top dressing and as well as cross hatching and doing like double cuts. So yeah, we did test them out.
Follow on.
So even though that there's no tax impact that these are DC funded, there is going to be a tax impact in savings of staff time, correct?
Director Culver?
Through you, Mayor Coghlan, it has an impact on our capacity for sure. Yeah, a notable impact on our capacity to apply labor to work across the spectrum of the township.
Through you to Mr. Culver. What was our test area? Right now we're using them. Can you speak to the test area and also let me know how many hours, you just mentioned it before, but I didn't write it down, the amount of hours in savings that we have for labor in that test area per week?
Director Culver?
So the demo was run on fields 1 through 5 here at the Tree Nursery Sports Park. They're an ideal situation based on the radius that the control unit has. There's about 9.1 acres of coverage for the 5 soccer fields. It takes about 8 hours to cover fields 1, 2, and 3, and about 7 hours mowing fields 4 and 5. So a total of 15 hours to complete the entire site. So that's one cut of the fields.
Follow on.
Through you to CAO Schmidt, can we not, if we were not to do this, could we reallocate those DC funds to another project?
Theo Schmidt?
Through you, Mayor Coghlan, to Councillor Fisher. So Councillor Fisher, as it relates to DC funds, they cannot be allocated to a replacement project, if you will, replacement of infrastructure or fleet. It would be needed to be redirected towards more a growth-related capital expenditure. So you can't transfer DC funds to replace an existing vehicle. It has to be a new addition to the fleet, so a growth-related item. So in that case, yes, you could. But if you're wanting to transfer these funds to replace a piece of existing equipment, then no.
Follow on.
I know in the past I think we replaced a loader. I believe it was a front end loader, and we kept the existing one, so we could pay for the new one, but we needed to keep the existing one. So could we not use this money to buy new 0-turn mowers, for example? Because it would be growth related, but we wouldn't be replacing equipment, and we could use them in multiple locations throughout Springwater, not just a certain area.
Director Culver?
Through you, Mayor Coghlan, yes, we can definitely, it's equipment. So equipment is identified within the DC background study, and that's where this is being identified to basically effectively replace equipment that we would be purchasing to address growth. Certainly, that doesn't have to be the robot mowers. It can be, human operated vehicles. We struggle with humans to operate them at this point. And in terms of how they're applied across the municipality, this allows us to take machines that we normally use at Tree Nursery Sport Park and move them across the municipality. So this is why we're making the recommendation.
Thank you. And I think that the information provided earlier this year, the emails that you sent and the pictures, and you walked council through that via email. I think this is exciting. I think that it's outside the box, and staff seems to be excited about it. Our new director seems to be excited about it. And I think that this is, I'm excited about the program. I think it's great. I had a follow on from Councillor Fisher and Councillor Alexander.
I'm not that excited about it. I find that we're spending $80,000, and I really see it being a very localized thing that we can do. It seems to me, and I've done a bit of research on it, works on a grid system. So we're spending $80,000 for two lawnmowers to really deal with one area. And even if that does expand, you know, in previous years we were able to mow all of the lawns that we needed to in Springwater, and we seem to be having trouble right now. I'm not 100% sure why. I'd much rather see this money reallocated to, you know, new zero-turn mowers if you wanted, or better equipment that could be utilized throughout Springwater, not just in a certain area. So I unfortunately, I don't see the value in the program, but yeah, so I wouldn't like to see it go through. I'd like to see it reallocated.
Counselor Alexander?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. My concern with this is more, I appreciate the fact that we did the study on it. If this is the direction we're moving towards, then to me, we are replacing staff with equipment. And if that's the road we're gonna go down, that's okay. But that has other implications down the road. So right now, we're being asked to add numerous staff. And then we're putting forward a project that essentially is going to end up taking those jobs away. So I'm just not sure if we're thinking this, if we have a long-term plan with this, because it is an $80,000 investment. So what would be the long-term plan?
Director Culver?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I think, you know, again, to explain the math, I've estimated that we need an additional 6 bodies to cover the 300 plus. I think it's nearly 374 if we count the trails of acres of property in the township. This effectively helps us with one. Council referred one other body to this discussion today. So that would basically set us up to acquire 2 effectively in terms of person hours of the 6 that I would assess we need. Again, we did not intend, we're not intending to replace future work, you know, reduce staff time. We simply don't have enough, and this was what I would call a creative way for us to move in a direction where we could supplement the hours needed by purchasing rolling stock that we will need anyway. We'll need mowers as we go forward anyway. But again, it's council's choice and decision, of course.
Counselor Thompson?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and through the chair to Director Culver. Thank you for that explanation. And please correct me if I'm wrong. My assumption and understanding of these robotic mowers that they wouldn't be suitable for all of our mowing needs. The soccer fields are perfect for them and very, very unique. Number one, number two. I don't know about you guys, but I seemed like I was on my lawnmower all the time last summer. With climate change and the warm weather and the rain we got, I was cutting my grass more. Can you maybe share with us if climate change has any factor on why we're needing to cut our grass more often?
Director Culver?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So certainly the summer season is much, much longer. This is compounding issues we have in terms of resource capacity. It seems to start earlier. We don't have the drought period in the middle of the summer season that we used to have where growing actually stops. It seemed to remain wet, especially in the last several years. And obviously, you know, everybody is aware that, you know, it's only been recently that the warmer weather has hit and we started to sort of, you know, move into winter. So yeah, it does have a compounding effect. To answer the first part of the question, no, the mowers, if they weren't an ideal situation, and there aren't very many examples, there's a lot in North America, but in Canada or in Ontario, at least, I'm only aware of 2 other circumstances. One is Waterloo, and they're working on purchasing their 2nd or 3rd set of robot mowers to address their needs. The other one is Strathroy Caradoc, who've recently added a robot mower to there. So we're using those examples to kind of understand what the ideal circumstances are, and based on that, we determined that the fields 1 through 5, and ultimately, again, part of a longer term plan, The baseball pinwheel here at Tree Nursery Sport Park would also be applicable to the robot mower application.
Counselor Fisher?
Through you to Manager Culver. It's roughly 9.1 acres that we're mowing with the robotic mowers. How many acres in all of Springwater do we look to mow throughout the course of the summer?
Director Culver.
So through you, Mayor Coughlin, there's a few different parts of answers to that question. So I've already mentioned that there's about 374 managed spaces within the township. That doesn't necessarily mean they're all mowed or mowed on the same frequency or mowed to the same standard. So a place like Tree Nursery Sport Park receives multiple and intensive mowing because it is a high functioning, high value and highly used sport facility. We have other grass spaces in town where we mow, but it's more for aesthetics, it's more for weed control, it's more for more casual use, not for sport specific use. So the big answer to the question is about 374 acres, including trails. But in terms of what requires this level of manicure, it's really Tree Nursery Sport Park is it.
Counselor Fisher?
I guess my issue with it is I'm looking at 374 acres, understanding that yes, there's different degrees of mowing involved, but I guess we're being asked to spend $80,000 to satisfy 9.1 acres of that 374. Doesn't seem proportional to me. I'd also say that larger zero-turn mowers cover a wider breadth of mowing. I would say that we could probably attain one of those mowers for $25,000 to $35,000, and probably cut that down. You're saying 15 hours to mow 9.1 acres. You know, we could likely cut that down considerably. But again, I don't see it as proportional for $80,000 of taxpayers' money, 374 acres, but we're focusing $80,000 to mow 9.1 acres. So that's one issue I have with it.
Counselor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And just one question about the mowers again. Do you still need a person to monitor the mower, place the mower, pick up the mower? Like, you still need somebody to be in control of the mower. You don't leave it outside, do you? Thank you.
Director Culver?
Actually, no. They're operated through a GPS location device. That one of the advantages is they can mow overnight. We can time them to cut out after the watering is done and coordinate with different bookings on the field. They don't require. They have safety default systems. In the 6 week that we had the demo, there were 4 safety defaults triggered. At that time, an individual has to go and figure out what caused it. In one case, the soccer net blew and it got caught into the blades and the mower stopped. And so we had to go and untangle it and get it started again. Yeah, but no, it doesn't require any human operation whatsoever. Once a week, we need to blow it down with a compressed air.
Counselor Moore?
Thank you. So you leave it out all the time? It never comes in or out?
Director Culver?
Through you, yes, it's in the field. It did for the 6 weeks. One of the concerns staff had, despite there being 0 reports in other communities of, vandalism or theft or anything like that, we had a concern that maybe we would be the anomaly during the demo period. It wasn't touched, and it has GPS tracking, and it's got monitors. So if it had been, we would know. So it hadn't, and reports across all of the other 2 communities and across North America is that they are left untouched.
Counselor Moore?
Thank you.
Council, before we do move on.
Yeah.
I think we'll take want to take a break now, or do you want to go through that?
I just have wastewater and water
Okay.
section left.
We'll just finish that up. Oh,
Is that
Council,
okay?
Deputy Cabral?
Yeah, actually, before we get to water, wastewater, there's a couple here I wanted to ask about. Just in regards to just a question more than anything else, is the tax supported $50,000 for the Midhurst Union Cemetery. Is that going to be considered recoverable once the plots are sold? I'm just trying to figure out if down the road we're going to recoup those tax dollars with respect to the cemetery itself. So maybe, I don't know whether that's for CEO Schmidt.
Clerk Marshall?
The director.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through you to Deputy Mayor Cabral. The 50,000 would not be recoverable. The sale of the 24 plots, new plots that we would open would recover around 20,000 of that.
Thank you. And with respect to through you, Mayor Coughlin, to I just want to know, there was a $75,000 carryover from 2023, I believe, into 2024 for fire and emergency management. I'm talking about the renovation of fire station number 5. Is that included in the $136,000? Okay, I
Manager
see
Dean?
someone nodding your head. Yes, okay, that's good. Thank you. The next question I have is in respect of the vac machine. If I'm thinking about this correctly, this is a large vehicle with a big tank on the back, got a sweeper on it, and it also has a big suction apparatus at the back. And I know it's a 2010 vacuum sweeper, but I just wanted to ask, this vehicle, to the best of my knowledge, was always kept inside during the winter months. So I just wanted to really get a feel for the shape of this vehicle, considering it really wasn't utilized much in the wintertime. It seemed to be kept in yard 3 indoors. So through you to maybe Manager Ha, if he could bring us up to speed on the condition of the vehicle. And whether or not we might be able to get another year or 2 out of it before we get rid of it to purchase another one that's going to be a trailer.
Manager Ha?
Yep, through you, Mayor Coughlin to Deputy Mayor Cabral. Yes, you're right. It's given that the nature of a sweeper that has water on board, it has always been stored indoors to keep it from freezing, and gives us the use of the vac part of it but when required. It is, it's been rebuilt once in the time that I've been here, and it's coming due for another one, and parts are getting harder and harder. Elgin doesn't make that unit anymore. So it's getting harder to get parts through our supplier, hence the reason we're looking at going in a slightly different route to make it a little more versatile. We'd be looking for a pickup sweeper that would attach actually to the loader, where we could then go and do our sweeping cleanup, and it actually does a better job of sweeping, sweeps basically into a dustpan.
I'm sorry, Manager Ha, I have to apologize. This would be the vac truck we're talking about. I know there's another piece here for a sweeper for a front end loader, but there's also an ask for $150,000 for a vac type of vehicle on a trailer. So it's 2 different things, right? Thank you.
Manager Ha?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, to the Deputy Mayor. You are correct. We'd be looking at replacing the vac sweeper that is basically 2 units built in one with 2 separate units that actually do a better job of each of them. So a vac trailer that we could do our own hydro vacuuming, utility locates when we're doing ditching, that kind of thing, so damage isn't done, signpost installs, and then the attachment for the loader that we would then use as a sweeper. So basically 2 units to replace the one very complex unit.
Follow on?
Thank you very much, Manager Ha. And I just wanted to get a sense of where that vac truck actually was. And I do appreciate that if parts are hard to find, then it really might not suit our purposes going into tomorrow. So thank you.
Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I know I said water and wastewater, but I have to go back to fire and emergency. So Chief Kirk, if I could ask quickly. Chief Kirk, I'm looking for an update for the replace fire pump 31 that we had. It looks like 2024, or it's a project number 2025, but it looks like carryover. And so I'm looking for a status update on that for $1.2 million. Yeah.
Chief Kirk?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and through you to Councillor Moore. The truck arrived in Quebec about 2 weeks ago for paint, and we're supposed to have it back in Ontario sometime within the next week or two with delivery before Christmas.
Councillor Moore?
Thank you. So the timeline for that start to finish was almost 2 years. I know it's been a long time, but.
Chief Kirk?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And now you're taxing my 61-year-old brain, but I think it was close to a year. It was a demonstrator, keep in mind. That truck now to purchase, if we were to do it from a build, would have been upwards of 2 to 3 years.
Thank you. And I remember you said last year that, you know, these things are now taking a really long time. There was another ask in the budget, I believe.
Councillor Moore, I do have a
Oh, sorry,
follow-on question.
sorry.
Councillor Alexander? Oh, is it about the, oh, okay.
Thank you. There was another ask, I believe, from fire. Is it about a computer program or something to that effect? Without me, you know, shuffling through all my papers, if you could just explain what that's for too. And if we really need that for next year, that would be helpful.
And probably, are we speaking to the program change?
Okay, sorry, maybe, you know.
Councillor Alexander?
Sorry, that was the question I was gonna ask, because it is listed in the capital projects, 2022-43, page 333, and it appears it's a carry forward of 20,000, but it does appear to be pretty much exactly the same as the program change. So I'm just wondering if this is in here in error and that $20,000 actually isn't needed to be carried over because we've now put it into the program change.
I'll turn to either Director Bedard or Chief Kirk.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Councillor Alexander, that's correct. The amount in the capital budget can be removed. It's a duplication. When we were compiling the 2025 budget process, and through that, we the project's more of an operating cost now and not so much the one-time capital. It was my mistake. I didn't realize it was in the capital, so please disregard that.
Thank you. Did you want to take a break? I'm fine.
And water and wastewater would be dealt with separately. So if there's anything.
I only have one more thing then.
Councillor Moore?
Thank you. So the last thing then for recreation parks and facilities, I'll just go back there because they're not in order in my binder, unfortunately, is the Phelpston Rink Pavilion for 2025 at $750,000. Is that an actual number? Have we sent out for quotes? Have we sent out for design? Where are we at with that? Thank you.
Director Culver?
Thanks, Mayor Coughlin. No, we have not sent out for design, nor we've established a quoting process that's based on precedent. So we've looked at precedents and used that to determine the budget estimate.
Councillor Thompson?
Thank you. And through the chair to Director Culver, when I came in from my one-on-one sessions, I asked that question. I was really interested in this project. Could you kind of just share with us what your big picture of that facility is, if you remember what you shared?
Director Culver?
Through you, Mayor Coughlin. So recognizing that this project is large, is identified in roughly $750,000. We wanted to see what opportunities $750,000 might acquire, and this is not dissimilar to what what staff came to council with regarding Homer Barrett Park in terms of establishing these places in the community. So the pavilion rink, or the rink pavilion, sorry, offers an opportunity to kind of rethink the Phelpston Park and identify it as a community park because of its central location, because of its location on the North Simcoe Rail Trail, and look to getting into a process of identifying what could be its higher use value for the overarching community, even while we serve the local residents, in that vicinity. So we've had conversations with Cycle Simcoe and done some, theoretical backgrounding on the idea that it could become a gravel cycling hub. It's a growth activity in the community, given the access that we have and provide for trails. So that was sort of the theory that we were going under as we talked about this very large investment for the community.
Councillor Alexander.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So completely appreciate the idea of this very large investment in the Phelpston rink. I think it might be helpful to have it broken down a bit. I think if I'm looking at, it is a large number, obviously. I would support it because it's one of the communities I represent, and I would love to see that area have a bigger, that center. I think in terms of representing Phelpston, the rink cover is the biggest ask. It's been an ask since I moved there 20 years ago. I know I personally came to council as part of a CRA numerous times. Mayor Coughlin was here asking for funds for that. So if there is worry in terms of such a big number, I would be more interested in if we could parcel it up, if you will, to say, okay, this is what we think it's going to cost for the roof. Let's start to move forward on that. And then this is what we think it's going to cost, maybe another year, 2 years down the road to, get that vision of a more complete center. So I would just put that out there as an option, because although I completely appreciate where you're going with this, I do want to ensure that the roof remains top of mind.
Director Culver.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I want to be clear that the 750 doesn't include an expansive plan. That's not where that number is founded. And I probably misspoke somewhat when I said that we haven't done any quoting. I did do a quoting on a fabric solution. So not a wood or metal solution, but it would be metal with a fabric membrane stretched across to provide the cover. And that came in based on 2 quotes, I believe, and I can look it up because I have them. I think it was about $500,000, high 400 to $500,000 to do that. And I chose that to go down that one because I expected it would be an unacceptable proposition, but mostly just to figure out what the low part of the brought to kind of test the 750 precedent. So that's, like I say, it's not really a quote against the project because the project hasn't been defined, but it was a way to sort of test the precedent example so that we could say, yeah, we know what the high and low could be.
Councillor Alexander.
Okay. Again, so I've obviously, you've done some quoting on this. I'm surprised in that I have had conversations with people regarding Norwood, who's done something very similar, and they did the metal steel roof or whatnot, and it came in, I believe, around the 300,000 to 400,000, and it was very similar structure to what we're looking for. So I'm surprised that we've jumped that much, especially considering, because I know last year this was in at 500,000, and it did jump to the 250. So I'm questioning again. I certainly don't want to see this removed. I would like it to stay, but I want to ensure that we're spending our money properly and ensure that the $250,000 jump, when we're looking actually in economic state, that building materials, specifically steel, is falling in price. It's not going up in price.
CEO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Councillor Alexander and members of council. So the number that's showing in the budget, as Director Culver mentioned, is the estimate at this time. Obviously, the project is 100% funded from development charges. So if council is agreeable to leave it in the budget, obviously staff will move forward with a plan and to come back to council with that plan. And should the number be much less than 750, then we would only be drawing what's required out of the reserve for that project. So again, no impact on tax dollars at this time. Essentially, it's a number that Director Culver had mentioned is an estimate at this stage, but the project is still yet to be scoped, and that will come back to council for ultimate approval.
Director Culver?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And just while CA Schmidt was speaking, I was able to pull up the quote that I got from the provider. So this is a fabric solution, $486,000, 680, not including site preparation, drainage excavation, compaction, granular, and finishing, nor building permit fees and approvals, et cetera. And this was quoted on October 22nd. So just for currency, in case council's wondering where we land, this is sort of indicative of where we are in terms of the construction marketplace right now.
I think at this time, council, we will take a break and 3:05. So 3:15, that work, 10 minutes? Thank you. Okay. Council, we can reconvene. We are on number 1, operating budget, capital budget, and 10-year plan. At this time, council, we would need to provide direction to staff with the regards to the scenarios, and if there are any changes, as we discussed earlier today, to be pulled or pushed as amendments, now would be the time. Councillor Moore?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So I had one last question about wastewater and the water and wastewater master servicing plan for 2025. The carryover from 2024 was $38,000. That is now increased to $200,000 for 2025. So wondering, is that something that is in the works already? Is that something we could postpone? I realize it comes from reserves, but like DC's, money is money that comes in and we need to be responsible for it. So the reserves also.
Thank you. And CEO, if you wanted to address water and wastewater now, or do you want to wait until item number 2? Number 2. So, okay, within the capital portion of it. CEO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Councillor Moore. So Councillor Moore, I believe the intent of the request for the 200,000 is that there's a change in scope in the water and wastewater master servicing plan that will be coming forward to council in the near future. So in order to continue with that project, we're asking for additional money to be able to complete that. But like I said, staff will be needing to come to council in 2025 to request additional scope change in that project. So the request is for additional money now, and staff will be coming forward, like I said, in January or February with the additional request in change of scope to provide the details for your consideration.
Councillor Moore?
Thank you. So that is work then that you see being done next year, confirmed. Okay. And then the last one I have is about the replacement of the motor control system, which is the wastewater infrastructure portion, went from the carryover of $175,000 to 2025 at $2,730,000. And then in 2026, $3,954,000. So if somebody could please speak to those projects, that would be helpful.
Good afternoon. My name is Amanda. I'm the development engineering technologist here. We are going to be doing quite a few different projects within the Elmvale wastewater treatment plant. These funds are for phase 1 of our construction, which will include 3 different types of filters to be upgraded, plus multiple other small upgrades within the treatment plant. So we are asking for those funds to complete the projects. We are just about ready to tender them and get the contractor selected. So did you want a little bit more about them?
Councillor Moore?
Thank you. I have sort of a high level understanding. We've already looked at these, but they've carried over from 2023. And so curious to know that, is this work, this $2,700,000 worth of work, are you anticipating this to be completed in 2025?
Yes, the work is supposed to take about 1 year. So it should be started within the next few months, and then it will continue until about this time at the end of the year, 2025.
Okay. And just one more. Oh, did you want to go ahead? Oh.
CEO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Councillor Moore, just to add on to Mrs. Jones' comments there. So we have had obviously some transition with staffing in this area. And so, you know, the idea was, and council did have a tour of the Elmvale wastewater treatment plant within the last year, maybe, if I recall. And so at that time, you know, staff had identified a number of improvements required at the plant. And so this is just one of those projects that are included in order to expand and to continue to ensure that that plant is operating at the top capacity, if you will. So again, some of this carryovers due to some of the transition in some of our staffing. And so the intent is as Ms. Jones mentioned, to have this project completed in 2025.
Councillor Moore?
That concludes my questions. When ready, though, I would like to make a proposal.
And Councillor Alexander? Councillor Fisher.
Thank you. I just have a comment and a request for moving forward. My comment in general is to thank Councillor Moore for bringing forward us going through line by line in the capital budget. I know it's tedious. I know we can do it in one-on-ones, and some of us have done it on one-on-ones as well. However, it is in our job, one, I think, to allow the public to see, because there are people that do actually ask me about trucks. But like, there's people that pay attention and really dig in. And so I think it's important we have the discussion at the table. I feel it's also important because I change my mind on stuff. When I listen to other people, and by other people, I mean the seven of us, when I hear their opinions and how they look at something, that will sometimes change my mind. So I do think it's important we do it. So thank you for bringing it forward. And I would request that we go back to doing this, because I know when I started, we did do presentations of the full capital budget with the pictures up there, and I get it adds time, and I get we're all busy, trust me, I know that, but I do feel it flows better. This was a lot of us each individually running through a binder, a lot for you to know where our headspace was versus just going one by one and us asking the questions in that flow. So I would request that we do that again moving forward.
Councillors Fisher, oh, sorry, CEO Schmidt, and then
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Council Alexander. So Council Alexander, happy to do that. Respectfully, that was what staff was prepared to do. But as you may recall, on November 6th, we were provided with scenarios and direction, and hence, based on that direction, change of course, and hence why we're here today. And again, happy to go through capital and operating in the future. But again, change in direction that happened on November 6th. So.
Councillor Fisher and Deputy Cabral.
Thank you. Through you to Director Culver. I'm just looking at 2020-25 Elmvale Community Park Master Plan. Just wanted to know, one, is it tax-based funded, which it looks like it is, and can you take us through exactly what it is, what it's hoped to achieve, and also it seems to me that that area of land is not entirely ours. I believe it's Floss Agricultural Society's land, some of it. So I was just wondering if you could take us through that.
Director Culver.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through you to Councillor Fisher. It's actually should be DC funded. If it's, I think it was mislisted in the document, and talked to Treasurer Bedard, and I think it's been corrected. So it's DC funded, not tax funded. It was based on, I believe, the original master plan, that there be an assessment done for developing a community park in Elmvale, because it doesn't have anything currently that matches that description, that meets that criteria for what the official plan calls a community level park. So Floss Ag currently serves a high recreational function and value in the community. But you're right, we don't own the property. So this fund is at this point a bit of a placeholder while we pursue that conversation with Floss Ag about how the property could be jointly improved to leverage as a community space within Elmvale and Springwater. But that's really what it is. It's about talking. It gives us the opportunity to get into a master planning exercise for the community of Elmvale.
Follow on.
2019-57, the courts, is that also on Floss Agricultural Society land?
Director Culver.
So through you, Mayor Coughlin, that's to be determined. That's a possibility following a constructive conversation with Floss Ag, and again, what we're doing is entering into kind of opening up a dialogue where we need to know what Flossag's, vision is for their own property, that they own, and the impact they need it to have and to serve their interests. But also we recognize that because it contains one of the municipality's most valuable assets, and there have been other opportunities for recreation on the site, including a baseball diamond that we don't manage. We need to have a more consolidated conversation. So the tennis course is also a bit of a placeholder for where that could possibly land. Currently, we don't own land that's adequate for that particular facility, but subject to the conversations we're looking forward to having and have already begun in some regard, we'd like to use that because there is a deficit of that particular type of facility in the Elmvale area.
Deputy Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And while capital projects is still on the table, I do have some questions about some that come after water, wastewater. In particular, had some questions about page 338, corporate services, City View planning module. I'm just looking at where the funding for it comes from, and it says carry over from 2024, but it shows as contributions and other. And I had a brief conversation with CAO Schmidt. I just wanted some clarity on where the funds are actually coming from. I know building department does do much of its work basically self-funded, but still would be nice to know where these funds are actually coming from to pay for that module. So that would be my first question through you, I guess, to CAO Schmidt or to Director Bedard.
Can you repeat the line item?
Sure. It's page number 336. Oops, sorry, I apologize. 2023-107.
Director Bedard?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to the Deputy Mayor. This project being funded from the Municipal Modernization Program or through the COVID Reserve. Just a note from staff, it's being funded from one of those two funding streams.
Thank you.
Deputy Cabral?
Yes, I guess I'd be looking at 2025-83. And my question there is, it's for the Zamboni to turn around at the end of the arena there, and I'm just looking at the figure of $55,000, and I'm wondering, how large a pad are we talking about, and is that a realistic number, or is it a little bit on the high side? It seems to me, not knowing, how big a pad they need to turn the Zamboni around to dump snow, as it is tax supported. I'm just wondering if there's a different number that can be put in its place, or if this is something that could be deferred to next year even.
Manager Dean?
So I will refer to Manager Dean. I do believe that we're talking about creating a more robust scenario for the Zamboni, so we're not dealing with replacement over longer term, but I'll let Manager Dean take the answer.
Manager Dean?
Number was provided and I did work with contractor pricing that was received this past year for concrete pricing. So we do have a realistic price. I'm not saying might be slightly different. They're realistic price based on the increase we expect in next year and based on the concrete that we require for that location and that the machine would be going to market.
Okay, thank you. My next question would be in respect of 2020-46. It's the replacement for Homer Barrett Park rink boards. This has come up a number of times. At least now it's coming out of some contribution funds as opposed from tax funds. But I know that in the past we've looked at possibly the alternatives, and I've made mention of what they use down in Wasaga Beach at the ballpark there. It's kind of like a plastic boards that they fill either with sand or with water, and I'm wondering whether or not that was ever explored. I know I made mention of it before when this came up, and my understanding was that staff were going to be looking at that. I'm just looking at the $80,000 price tag, and obviously if we can save a few bucks, it just means that there's money in that fund available for other things at Homer Barrett Park. So if staff might be able to just bring us up to speed whether or not they looked at that particular option, or are we talking about new wooden boards, or where are we going with this particular build at the at Homer Barrett Park?
Manager Dean? If we could increase the volume on that mic a little bit, that would be.
That number on, again, a high level quote, so kind of a first stage quote for the steel frame boards, with the Lexan or the Lexi boarding. So a permanent board was originally looked at for the application, as in the summer, it's also used for other multi-sports, such as pickleball and, other activities that do like the boards around it. It has been used for some hockey, so we didn't look at the ones that were, kind of put them up in the winter and take them down in the summer, based on some other activities that are taking place at that sports pad. We do utilize, the board scenario in the winter, but again, staff are kind of hands for comments again to look further into, some other options, but. Knowing. Okay. Heavily uses it in the summer and some other activities, you like the work to.
Thank you. Follow on.
Follow on?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I guess what you're describing, would it be similar in nature to what we have at the pavilion down in, say, in Midhurst, where it's a solid wall with the Lexan on the inside, like hockey boards? Okay, thank you. I can certainly see where that might drive the price up. And certainly a permanent solution might be better suited than a temporary one. Thanks. And I am.
Okay. Councilor Moore?
So I will then make my proposal as discussed through the last 2.5 hours. Are you ready, Clerk Commercial? Okay. So the first deferral I have is 2025-74. You've got that? Okay. So that's $156,320. Item 2026-16, deferral for $121,000. 16. Also a roads project. Maybe Manager Eberhart, you could help. Sorry.
Eberhart?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through yourself to Councilor Moore. Sorry, you're indicating 2026-13 Rosewood Ave, Idlewood to Silverwood?
Thank you. Is $121,000?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, so that's just my typo then. Thank you. Number 3, 2025-75, deferral for 72,600. Thank you. 2025-73, deferral for 135. I believe this is one Councillor Fisher might have. What is 2025-73?
Manager Eberhart?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through yourself to Councilor Moore. 2025-73 is Rainbow Valley Road from Warren Street to County Road 27, where we propose.
Okay, thank you. Oh. 74. Oh, I have that one. Yeah. Okay, we're good. 2025-65 was the deferral for the 2015 truck for $80,000. 2025-53 deferral, $80,000 for robotic mowers. 2025-16, which I'm just asking for a reduction for the $750,000 for the Phelpston Pavilion to $500,000. This brings us in line to something more realistic.
Reduced to, what was it?
$500,000. And then 2022-43 was the fire and emergency services, $20,000 that was not supposed to be there.
So, yeah, we're good.
For me, that's my proposal.
Sorry,
I just,
Counselor Moore?
if I could just ask, when we're finished, that Director Bedard recalculate then the budget impact when we are finished. Thank you.
Okay, and before we do move through each of these individual road programs, understanding that there is a resolution from council that says that we're requesting 3.5 million. Would that then mean that that commitment is still before staff and you would then reassign different roads to that project, or is it the intent of council to pull back on the 3.5? Yes.
Whichever is, I would say, simpler for staff, but which is also more palatable for council, whatever works. The 3.5 million already for roads, I assumed that these were incorporated. So if we have to do a reconsideration for that, I'm fine to do that.
CEO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mayor Coggan, through you to members of council. So again, maybe I may have Clerk Marshall help me here. My understanding is the direction that was provided earlier this year. Staff have provided for that in the current budget. If council wishes to change that, I believe they have the purview to do that. That being said, if it's just for 2025 to assist with the tax increase that you're seeing, then I think you have the ability to do that. That said, for 2026, unless council reconsiders that direction, you will see staff come forward with 3.5 million in the 2026 budget. So just so we're clear that for 2025, we'll do it. But if there's no reconsideration, then you will see us come back in 2026 with the 3.5 million investment, unless you reconsider that direction.
Thank you. Manager Eberhardt, earlier in discussion today, you said that yourself and staff had identified a priority list and that we're prepared to, if council was to reduce the 3.5 million, do the roads that have been identified by council, are those on that priority list, or is it very heavily? Sorry, I just wanted to follow up on that.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I may ask the clerk to repeat, if you don't mind, the roads that were outlined and the project numbers, just so I can cross-reference. Thank you.
Clerk Marshall?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So I have project 2025-74 Walt Road. Project 2026-13 Rosewood Avenue. Project 2025-75 Floss Road 3 West. And I would just look to Councillor Moore. Councillor Moore, did you want 2025-73, the Rainbow Valley Road, or no?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Manager Eberhardt?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through yourself to the rest of the council. Yeah, of the four roads that we've outlined, or sorry, the four roads that council here has outlined, they would be within the top 5 that we would recommend for deferral. That said, deferring projects to next year will have a domino effect on our program, and that next year then we will come back, like as CAO Schmidt outlined, with 3.5 plus 3% increase of for road resurfacing projects. But the deferral on this project will defer projects from next year onto the following year and so forth. So just keep that in mind as well. Thank you.
If I could have some approximate math on the total of the So council, my suggestion might be that rather than going project by project, understanding that staff have heard and we have provided direction and staff concurs with, would it be simpler for us then to simply reduce the tax funding for the 3.5 by $500,000? I think that the aggressive approach needs to take place, but I think in coupled with the pressures that we're experiencing at the table, if we were to simply hold back $500,000 out of the tax supported portion of that, what would that look like rather than going line by line, so that if there's other projects that could be I don't know. Director Bedard? No, not yet.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through you to council. The difficulty calculating the tax rate increase right now is we have multiple budget scenarios before council. Each budget scenario changes the funding of the previous budget scenario. So if we build on budget scenario 3, we have approximately about $550,000 worth of funding from taxation for roads. If we were to reduce that by the 500,000 that's been mentioned, we're in a very similar situation to where we are this year, where we're not contributing tax dollars to our roads infrastructure. And we will be back before council next year requesting tax dollars again in order to meet the 3.5 million goal, should that still stand. So, just on some preliminary math right now, we could accomplish what's before council. We would work within that, say, pot of money, for lack of better words, and allocate it to each project that has made it thus far. But again, the implication is that we are not sustainably funding our roads infrastructure.
Councillor Moore?
Sorry, thank you. And so that I'm clear, if we reduce then to the 3 million from the 3.5 million, that would not come forward next year. Like that work won't get done, but you would be asking for the road work next year. But that $500,000 would be incorporated into the $3 million? Or I don't mind doing a reconsideration for the 3.5 to the 3, if that does defer these 4 projects and not put us in a strange space. The 3 million, I guess I'm confused as to where that sits in the future.
And I think maybe the breakdown of the funding source for the 3.5, how much of it's coming from taxation, the portion that's coming from debenture, the portion that's coming from grants. If we could break that down for us again, please.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, through you to council. As proposed in the draft budget, the 3.5 million was to be funded 1.5 million through grants, so through the Canada Community Building Fund and the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund. Approximately 1 million was proposed to be funded through debt, and approximately 1 million was proposed to be funded through taxation. Through the 3 tax increase scenarios that we presented, we reduced that tax level of funding significantly by approximately 600,000 already. So to further draw down through these deferrals would deplete that level of taxation funding. With respect to whether council endorses 3 million or 3.5 million or what that number will be, the implication of that is just the further like a better word, enhancement, or our infrastructural deficit will grow over time. That I think Manager Everard can speak to the the funding requirement from a roads need study. But the more we defer, the harder it is for us to catch up.
Counselor Moore?
Thank you. And I fully appreciate that. But, this year we're in a difficult position. I don't know what next year will look like. So I'm still going to stand on the deferral of those 4 roads plus the remaining 4 deferrals. And if maybe Director Bedard could help me out and let me know to the base budget, what impact that makes, regardless of scenario 3 or scenario 2. Thank you.
Director Bedard?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. The impact of the base budget, so the deferring of the 4 roads, that's approximately 485, rounding up 500,000. So the impact on our base budget would be about 2.5% reduction. If 1% equals 200,000, then it would be about 2.5% reduction.
Counselor Moore?
And then I had an additional almost 500,000, 250, 80 and 80 and 20. So 180 plus 250. Thank you.
Director Bedard?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Councillor Moore. The other 4 projects that you mentioned, the truck, the mower, the reduction to the Phelpston Pavilion, and the removal of the fire software, those are funded through a combination of either debt reserves or development charges. So those projects would have no impact on the tax rate increase in 2025.
Counselor Fisher?
But I think it needs to be said that some of those DC funds could be reallocated to be used in other areas, correct?
CEO Schmidt, if you wanted to maybe repeat what was CEO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mark Algan. Through you to Councillor Fisher, as mentioned earlier, again, we can look to possibly redistribute some of those DC funds, but they would only be eligible for growth-related projects. We cannot fund a replacement through DCs. So that would take some time from staff to actually review to see whether or not we could accommodate for that or not. I can't do that with the time limit that we have right now, sorry.
Counselor Thompson?
And again, through the chair to Director Smith, they would, or CEO Smith, they would have no impact on the percentage number that I think council members are looking for with regards to taxation impact.
CEO Schmidt?
Through you, Mayor Colgan, to Councillor Thompson. So you're likely correct in that regards, because if we're just simply redistributing DC funds from one growth project to another, that growth project was likely not funded from taxation to begin with. So there's likely no impact to the bottom line.
Counselor Fisher?
I still have to say, though, it's money spent. So whether we spend $80,000 on robotic lawnmowers, is it money well spent, or can we use that $80,000 for something else growth related, but it's better use of those DC funds? So I understand what's being said, that it's not an impact to the tax base. It's still how we use our money, whether it's DC money or taxation. So I still see it as valid, highly valid.
Counselor Alexander and Counselor Fisher, or sorry, Counselor Garwood.
Yeah, with respect to the DC related projects, knowing that one of them does affect me, but I still do think if we're deferring them, even if we till next year potentially, or however the decision is made, it does allow, because we do have staff coming back early in the new year with where we sit with DCs, because we have some major projects coming up, and the more we pull from the DC fund, that number shrinks. So I think it's responsible of us potentially, if there's a few things we think we can defer, and then when we actually have the full picture of where we are, make those more fulsome decisions when we have the full information.
Counselor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And further to the comments here, understanding the DC information is forthcoming. But at this moment, CEO Schmidt, do you believe, like, have staff identified growth-related projects that there would be a significant shortfall, that reallocating $350-ish thousand, $400,000 at this moment in time would make sense to do so?
CEO Schmidt.
Through you, Mayor Colgan, to Councillor Garwood. I would answer your question as this: no, we have not looked at how we would reallocate those funds at this time. Understanding direction is, or conversation is just happening this afternoon. We have not had an opportunity to redirect those funds. While I have the mic, maybe I'll also reiterate the fact of I think there needs to be some clarity with regards to development charges, to be quite honest with you. So township staff have come forward with a development charge background study that identifies projects that are to be funded from development charges. And hence, through that, we collect development charges on behalf of our developers. Every time they come in, we issue a building permit, or they come in with a registration of a subdivision, we collect development charges. And those are to go towards projects that are in that background study. That's how DCs kind of function. So yes, there is opportunity and flexibility to move some of those funds around, but you cannot collect DCs for, say, a road and then have those funds transferred to a park. They have to be funded to another road. Similar, you can't collect DCs for a park and fund it to fleet. Again, the idea is we're collecting based on that background study. So there needs to be some clarity there from members of councils. That's how development charges work. So there is a little bit of flexibility, but not maybe to the extent that you're thinking.
So council, we do have 8 amendments before us. Are there any other amendments that are to be proposed to walk through? Deputy Cabral.
Yeah, Mayor Coughlin, thank you. I just read over that 55,000 for the concrete pad there. And it says it's currently asphalt and reaching the end of life. I'm wondering if that might be able to be pushed off to next year. That's the only thing I would suggest.
Clerk Marshall has captured that. Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I also think it needs to be said that there are a few things that have impacted this particular budget going forward that has made it as high as it is, and some of those are in relationship to both operationally and for staffing. And I think that we might find ourselves in a slightly better position come next year if we can get into next year, because those costs are already embedded in this budget going forward. So that's kind of my thoughts on it, is that I really do think we might be in a better position next year because we won't have these large expenditures that were in the magnitude of $1 million+ a couple of them that impacted this particular budget, which normally that may not have been the case. So that's why I'm kind of suggesting that if we do push off this Zamboni pad, is it critical? I don't believe that it is. I think it can wait till next year. But just a comment on the whole budget so far this year.
Thank you. And if I can ask that we pull up the slide that shows the pressures that were listed again. And I just want to be clear. What I'm hearing is that we don't feel that the 2 pressures that were over $1 million, and I'll just wait for the slide here. There. back to slide 3. Thank you. So Director Bedard, the labor compensation group benefits of $1 million and the investment in capital funded from taxation of $1.3 million. Understanding that staff will continue, CO Schmidt.
Thank you, Mayor Collin. I just want to clarify with members of council. So, the comment about expenditures, I will advise you that in 2026, $47.4 million in capital is proposed. In 2027, $44.4 million is proposed. In 2028, $50 million plus, and same within 2029. So deferring projects just continues to build those expenditures in future years. I get it. We have pressures. It's a tough budget, but you're kicking the burden down the road is what you're doing.
And I also just wanted to speak to on this slide, the labor and investment in capital funded from taxation. Those two pressures that we are experiencing this year, what is that going to look like next year? Is it going to look incredibly similar, very different? As long as council doesn't change their direction on the $3.5 million, we can expect to see these numbers in this capacity again next year, correct?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and through you to council. I'll start with labor. When we look at labor, those are all annual costs that we're going to see each year, with the only one that's a one-time hit is the volunteer firefighter health benefit. We need to build that into the budget this year in 2025. Once it's built into the budget, it's there to stay. So unless we increase the number of volunteer firefighters we have on roster, we won't have to, or the health spending account amount, we won't have to change that or increase it. Compensation, group benefits, those are going to continue to increase in the future, statutory deductions. So if we look at that 1 million, could it be 1 million in 2026? Possibly. When we look at the investment in capital funded from tax, and this speaks to the previous comment I made when you asked how the 3.5 million roads is being funded. Right now, it's being funded in a manner that's it's simply not sustainable. We cannot continue to take on debt to fund our infrastructure renewal. Debt is a great financing tool to allow us to purchase something we can't otherwise afford, and debt's primary use is for infrastructure growth. Investing in the community that will allow for growth to occur, to generate additional tax dollars, and that new growth pays the debt servicing. What we're finding in this budget is we're having to take on debt for infrastructure renewal. So we're having to take on debt to fund roads that already exist, we have to take on debt to fund bridges that already exist. And this is not sustainable. We can borrow internally for things that we've mentioned and spread that cost out internally. But there's going to be a limit to what we can do with that as well. So, when we look at that investment in capital funded from taxation, that is an amount that if we want to fund our roads, fund our building condition assessment program sustainably, we're going to see a very similar level of taxation support for those. So those two cost pressures, my advice would be that they're not going to go away.
Thank you. And reason I'm asking is that while these amendments, we'll just go through them one by one. But I don't see what's being presented to council this year being a lot different than next year, and pushing this to the next year is just going to make that problem even more significant. So I think that we need to start chipping away at it, but we will go line by line now through the amendments. And I will turn to our clerk.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So the first amendment that we have is that project 2025-74 Walt Road be deferred to the 2026 budget.
I have that moved by Councillor Moore, seconded by Councillor Fisher. And Counselor Moore, were you hoping I would turn to staff for each of these, or you're satisfied with the overview? Council, is there anything further on these? On this one, sorry? All those in favor? And that is deferred. Moving on now to our second.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. The second amendment is that project 2026-13 Rosewood Avenue be deferred to the 2026 budget.
Counselor Alexander. Council, all those in favor? Sorry, I need to see hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. That has been deferred.
Next amendment we have is that project 2025-75 Floss Road 3 West be deferred to the 2026 budget.
Mover and seconder. Moved by Counselor Moore, seconded by Counselor Fisher. All those in favor? That's deferred.
Next amendment is that project 2025-73 Rainbow Valley Road be deferred to the 2026 budget.
Yeah, I have that moved by Counselor Moore, seconded by Counselor Alexander. All those in favor? That has carried.
Next amendment is that project 2025-55 replace the 2012 450 dump box truck be deferred to the 2026 budget.
Counselor Moore?
Thank you. I didn't have that on my list. I had 2025-65, a 2015 truck. Maybe Manager Eberhardt, is that the right project number?
Manager Hubbard, we'll just look to you for some clarification on this, please. And your microphone, please, Counselor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I believe the project you were referring to that we discussed was 2025-05.
And can you describe the equipment, please?
Sorry. The title is Replace R2, a 2025 3-quarter-ton public works truck.
Counselor Moore?
Thank you. Is that 2015 with 138,000 kilometers? Okay, thank you.
Clerk Marshall?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I'll just read that again with that correction, that project 2025-05, the 2015 3-quarter-ton truck be deferred to the 2026 budget.
Thank you. Deputy Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Since most of the vehicles are being financed in-house, debt financed, I guess my question is, what would be, obviously, we're going to save whatever we would be paying for the vehicle this year, in addition to whatever the finance charges might be internally. But what kind of a picture could we get as far as the cost per year on this particular vehicle? Just a rough ballpark.
Director Bedard?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to the deputy mayor, without factoring in interest, assuming we, an $80,000 truck is paid over 4 years, it would be at $20,000 per year. The interest rate we would charge ourselves would be the average interest rate our investments achieve as to ensure our money did not lose value. That could be anywhere between 4% or possibly lower, depending on Bank of Canada policy.
Anything further on this one? And mover on seconder, please. I have Counselor Moore and Counselor Fisher. All those in favor? And that has been deferred. Clerk Marshall?
Okay, next project for an amendment is that project 2025-16, the Phelpston Rink Pavilion, be reduced to $500,000.
Mover and seconder for this, please. Deputy Cabral, Counselor Moore. All those in favor? That has carried.
The next amendment that we have is that project 2025-53 robotic mowers be deferred to the 2026 budget. Is that, or did you just want it removed? Deferred? Okay.
Counselor Moore? Mover and seconder, Counselor Moore and Counselor Fisher. Comments or questions on this? Not seeing any. All those in favor? And that has carried.
The next amendment is that project 2025-83, the Arena Zamboni concrete pad, be deferred to the 2026 budget.
Comments or questions on this, council? Mover and seconder, Deputy Cabral. Seconder is Counselor Fisher. All those in favor? It's deferred.
Okay, and the last amendment is that project 2022-43, the fire software being removed from the capital budget due to its duplication as a program change. I don't think that we necessarily need a motion for this. It's just administrative. The director can do that, but if council wishes to have a motion to identify that. Okay, perfect. That's it.
Thank you. So council, we now have 3 scenarios before us, so we would be providing direction to council the scenario and Counselor Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So I would propose that item number 1 be amended, that we adopt scenario 3, the 8% township tax increase with the changes or deferrals that we just discussed. And Director Bedard, with your photographic memory and your could you give an approximate blended tax increase change that those tax increases just or those deferrals would make?
Director Bedard.
Thank you, Mayor Colgan. Through you to Counselor Thompson. If I could have 5 minutes, if that would be appreciated, I could come back with where we stand approximately. I do want to caution council that scenario 3 contemplated a number of funding changes that are not outlined in the draft budget book that you have before you. So we have a pool of money or a pot of money that council's approved thus far to support roads. So within that pool, we just have to ensure we reallocate correctly, and then I can come back with what we anticipate the approximate tax increase to be.
Counselor Alexander.
Thank you. And I would just ask, when we are looking at these numbers, I think it's important that we speak to what the township rate is. I do understand at the end of the day, the blended rate is what our citizens will see. But this is our budget and we need to own the spring water rate. So I would just ask that we refer to it as what the full township rate is.
Mm-hmm. And understanding that we do have a committee of adjustment meeting in here in 45 minutes. Council, at your discretion, I do think we're going to need an additional meeting to get through these. I think tonight, if we could attempt to deal with the water and wastewater and the service partners and boards and leave our next meeting my goal would be to have us provide direction to Director Brazard at one of the scenarios so that our next meeting, he can come back with a picture of exactly where we stand prior to moving through each of the program changes that have been identified. I think that would position us well. Director Bedard.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to council. I would much appreciate that. Instead of trying to run through all these calculations on the spot, it would be greatly appreciated if I could confer with my budget team. And when we reconvene next, be able to present what we see the actual number to be where we stand, instead of me providing an approximate and most likely being off by a little bit.
So with council's indulgence, then we will finish in the operating budget and capital 10-year plan, number 1. We will then move to number 2 and carry on through the, program changes under the service partners and boards, which would bring us to number 14. I'll deal with those separately. So at this time, I have Counselor Thompson has proposed scenario number 3 be moved forward to our next session. And I'd be looking for a seconder for that, please. Counselor Garwood. Council, again, that's scenario 3. All those in favor? And that has carried. So now we'll go back to the main motion. For this is that the 2025-26 tax supporting operating budget as amended be included for consideration in the final draft for the 2025-26 budget. So those amendments would include scenario 3 and all those that we voted on previously. Council, all those in favor? And that has carried. We will now move on to water and wastewater based operating budget. Any questions on the operating portion for the water and wastewater? Deputy Cabral?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Just a general question, kind of trying to look down at the crystal ball. The operating budget, because we contract out, I just want to know where we sit with Aqua as far as their own staff is concerned. Are they in a situation where they'll be giving a large pay increase or anything like that? Or are they kind of locked into a contract for the next couple of years? Just trying to get an idea how accurate we might be on this. So I see CO Schmidt, so through you, Mayor Coughlin, CO Schmidt, if you could answer that, that'd be great.
CO Schmidt?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Through you to Deputy Mayor Cabral. I believe Deputy Mayor Cabral, Aqua will be likely be coming before council in the next month or so. I believe their contract is coming due in 2025. So they will be, we've yet to confirm a date, but they will be coming here to present to council. And at that time, definitely those types of questions could be further explored.
Not seeing anything further on the 2025-26 water and wastewater operating. Mover and seconder, please. Councillor Fisher and Councillor Thompson, that the 2025-26 water and wastewater rate-based operating budget be included for consideration in the final draft of the 2025-26 budget. All those in favor? And that has carried. Council, we now be moving on to our service boards and partners. Before us, we have 3 through 14 that would fall into this program. We will leave the program changes for our next meeting to give us a clear understanding. So at this time, council, before us, we have, I guess I have to read all of them, don't I? Bear with me. Mover and seconder for the service boards and, partners and boards, and this is a consent agenda. So the ones that we don't pull will be voted on all at once. Anything that we want to speak to, have redirection, change, or vote against, we would pull to be separate. So we have a mover and seconder, please. Councillor Thompson and Moore. Service partners and boards. Number 3, that the 2025 Georgian Bay physician recruitment budget request in the amount of $4,000 be included for consideration in the final draft budget. 4, that the Georgian Bay physician recruitment program change in the amount of $6,000 be included for consideration in the draft budget. 5, that the 2025 Berrien area physician recruitment budget request in the amount of $10,000 be included for consideration in the final draft budget. 6, that the 2025 NVCA operating levy request in the amount of $278,117 representing Springwater share be included for consideration in the final draft budget. 7, that the 2025 NVCA asset management levy request in the amount of $16,017 representing Springwater share be included for consideration in the final draft of the 2025-26 budget. 8, that the 2025 library operating budget request in the net amount of $982,729 being included for consideration in the final draft budget. 9, that the 2025 library program change community librarian in the amount of $78,065 be included for consideration in the final draft budget. 10, that the library program change additional hours in the amount of $26,764 be included for consideration in the final draft budget. 11, that the 2025 SSEA operating budget request in the amount of $98,972 representing Springwater share be included for consideration in the final draft budget. 12, that the 2025 SSEA sustainable severance sound request in the amount of $12,914 plus HST non-recoverable portion representing Springwater share be included in the final draft budget. 13, that the 2025 SSEA or Lake Monitoring Survey request in the amount of 1,751 plus HST non-recoverable portion representing Springwater's share be included for consideration in the final draft budget. Finally, 14, that the 2025-26 draft operating budget policing services in the amount of 2,998,731 be included for consideration in the final draft budget. And at this time, council, I will turn to have items pulled for reconsideration. If there's comment on any, they can remain in, but if you would like to have the vote against it or have it, the direction changed, at this time, we would need to pull it. Councillor Thompson.
6 and 7.
Councillor Fisher.
9 and 10.
Let's give council a minute just to make sure that there are no others. Councillor Moore.
Thank you. Just a comment. The Berrien area physician recruitment budget is set for $10,000 to be included, and the Georgian Bay physician recruitment is separated out 6,004, but Berrien area was really 8 and 2. Or am I right? We increased it by 2,000. So would that not be 8 and? Thank you.
CEO Schmidt.
Through you, Mayor Coggan, to Councillor Moore, you're correct. I believe from a procedural standpoint, so Georgian Bay came in with 4 and asked for the additional 6, whereas Barrie area physician came in at 8 and council directed and increased to 2,000 to 10,000, and hence why I believe you're seeing it as combined as opposed to separated for the Barrie area physician recruitment. So it wasn't a program change; it was direction by council to increase Barrie area to 10,000.
Council not seeing anything further, our service partners and boards. So items, Deputy Carell.
Yes, thanks, Mayor Coughlin. Just a comment on 14 there, seeing that some municipalities have been given opportunity by their respective detachment, I guess, to see about reducing costs. I'm just hopeful that that might be the experience that we have coming down the road too. Maybe we can shave a little bit off of this. Thank you.
So at this time, council, our service partners and boards, we will be dealing with item 3, 4, 5, 8, 11, 12, 13, and 14, which is the exception of 6, 7, 9, and 10. Council, anything further on these? All those in favor? And that has carried. We will now turn back to number 6. And I will have this moved by Councillor Thompson, seconded by Deputy Carell, that the 2025 NVCA operating levy request in the amount of 278,117 representing Springwater's share be included for consideration in the final draft budget. And I will turn to Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So I would propose, given the budgetary pressures we're under, to amend this and to remove the category 2 and 3 items from the NVCA budget and try to recover, I think, the education part of this budget, which is the Fort Willow Festival that's captured in that. I would propose that we take $5,000 from the swing budget and allocate it to the education side of it to ensure that it would more than double our township investment to this important event in our township, and it would save us about $27,000 or $28,000 with regards to these category 3 items, which are optional to our residents.
Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. Just further to that, at the November the 18th budget meeting when the NVCA was here, I asked Acting CAO Flanagan if she could provide council with a detailed breakdown in regards to what that $27,000 levy for category 2 and 3 programs equated to, understanding there is reforestation, stewardship, conservation lands, watershed science, education, and TIFIN operations. Within that information provided, the acting CAO indicated that Both education programs and conservation land programs support the festival at Fort Willow. Of course, this council's always been supportive, and I believe we should remain to be supportive of that important event in our municipality. If you add the spring water levy of $2,071 and change and the education levy of $1,326 and change, we're really looking at a less than $3,500 investment of that almost $28,000 going towards the festival at Fort Willow. So I'm happy that Councillor Thompson had brought this up, and really my question initially led to hoping that we would be able to save a bit of dollars, understanding the pressures and conversation around this table that's had today. Also looking at the fact that other municipalities in the neighboring area, understanding Orbadante is one of them that has opted out Category 2 and Category 3 programs. We do not have Category 2 programs proposed here today, so it is just Category 3. But I would say either $5,000 or even greater from the Springwater Swing Fund, understanding that that is an important festival. I know some conversations been, and these are maybe great questions that I wish the MVCA was in front of us to ask once again, is how do we ensure that we hold them to account to ensure that the donation that would be provided actually goes towards the festival? And those are great questions that I personally can't answer, but I believe it's a way that we could save almost $30,000 and also utilize the Springwater Swing funds to their true purposes for community benefit.
Thank you. Councillor Alexander.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So I have a question, and I'm going to put it towards CEO Schmidt, and I don't know if you can answer it, but you're probably might. With respect to the reforestation and the conservation parts of the Category 3, I'm assuming, I know the SSCA does this work in the north end, but I'm assuming they don't do it in the south, and I'm assuming they only do the reforestation, the tree planting, that type of work in the watershed that they cover, and then the NVCA does the remainder of the township, or am I wrong on that?
CEO Schmidt.
Through you, Mayor Coughlin, to Councillor Alexander, my understanding is exactly what you said. There is an MOU between the township, SSCA, and the MVCA with the intent that there wouldn't be any duplication of services. So my understanding is as you mentioned, reforestation in the Severn Sound watershed is done by Severn Sound, and reforestation in the MVCA jurisdiction would be done by the MVCA. To the extent that there's any potential overlap, I'm assuming that there would be dialogue between the two to ensure that there's no duplication. I can't promise you that, but I believe that my understanding is the same as yours.
Councillor Moore.
Thank you. And I'll just speak to the education portion of not just Fort Willow, but a lot of our children in Ward 4 and 5 attend schools in Barrie that make great use of the Tiffin Conservation Area in the spring for maple syrup festivals, throughout the winter for camps, throughout the summers for camps. As people, sort of in the north end of our township tend to go to Elmvale for those things, our children go to the Tiffin Conservation Area. And I would not want to see any of that educational component depleted. So I certainly can't support that.
Councillor Fisher.
I think we get tremendous value for our investment in the NVCA and these portions. So I wouldn't like to see us step away from it. So I wouldn't be in favor of changing it.
Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin, and I hope I can, council can understand the reason that I'm bringing this forward. Again, we just sat here and got a project on concrete pad in Elmvale for $55,000. So whether it's $5,000, $30,000, $55,000, we have to look at it all. We are not looking at a deduction in service or a deletion in service or even less. I see this as a further investment. Make it a $10,000 donation from the Springwater Swing Fund. We at the last council meeting, we received an update in regards to the current status of that bank account and the fact that we have hosted this event. Staff have worked towards this event for years, and we keep storing money away in it and not putting it back in the community as much as I think we could. So I see this as a way that we can further support not only the Tiffin operation, but education specifically for, as Councillor Moore mentioned, not only Ward 4, Ward 5 residents, but all of Springwater. So Again, I wish the MVCA was here to ask the question, and I should have asked it on the 18th, and I'm glad the information was provided after the fact, but I see that as a benefit, or at least, you know, partially funding. I don't know if we can use the Springwater Swing to even fund a part of this levy. Again, I'm just looking at options and ways that we can lower the tax burden on our residents. That's all.
Yeah. And before I go back to Councillor Thompson, I think I find this, don't disagree that the programs that are put on by Tiffin are great and they do add to the education of our children, but I think that education should be funded through education, just as I feel that physician recruitment should be funded through the province. I think that these are areas that are impact us, but whether or not Tiffin, whether there's a field trip or not, that should be to the discretion of the school board, not the municipality. I think that those pressures, the school boards is continue to sit at a 0% increase year over year. I think that we have municipal responsibilities, and field trips and physician recruitment, I feel, do not fall under that. And also, as much as having a golf tournament and it does provide a community benefit, we can't just keep pushing everything to the golf tournament just because there's no tax base, or we're never going to be able to support local food banks or local initiatives. So that's my 2 cents on those. So we do have, back to Councillor Thompson.
Your Mayor Coughlin, again, the reason I brought this up, we have budgetary pressures. Another reason is that we all sit here on the council. There's been a lot of things that have come forth about the NVCA, complaints from our residents about how it's managed and the work that they do. I think that they do some good work. This past spring, I was at Willow Creek for a press conference. The Minister of the Environment was there, and the province was giving them a significant amount of money to plant trees in the Menacing Swamp area, or the Menacing Wetlands area. So the tree planting is going on. I'm okay with supporting Tiffin. I'm okay with supporting Willow. I'm okay with supporting tree planting. I think that we can fund that through a different way and not through taxation. And I hope that one of you reconsider and that we could put this money to better use in our township.
Councillor Alexander and then Councillor.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So I do appreciate the conversation coming forward and us, again, trying to pull down the tax base. I do really appreciate that. I find with this category 3 with the NVCA, and I do agree with you, Councillor Thompson, the NVCA, our residents have a lot of issues with them, and I think they have a lot of work to do internally to respond better. We could talk about that for all day. The category 3 programs, to me, is the good stuff they do, the value they do add to the community. So I don't feel it's fair to take away from the good stuff to punish them for the rest of the mess that they do. So that's unfortunately where I'm sitting on that one, but I do appreciate bringing it forward in the conversation.
Councillor Moore.
Thank you. I wanted to add that I have had conversation with the NVCA about we do Dadwin Lookout too, and they are looking to partner with that and provide additional education to folks. And I want to step back because we also fund buses. We fund buses to community events and for our children, because we recognize how important those events are. That also really, it should be taken on by the school board, not by this council, but we've decided to do that. So to say that I'm just saying that for the value we get for what we pay, I think is definitely well spent.
I am Deputy Cabral.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. I'm listening to both sides of the equation here. But if we have to look at our own staff and say, you can't have a staff member to assist you in ways that they have indicated to us that are necessary, I have to say that in this particular case, I'm prepared to take a break from it for 1 year. I do understand that Springwater students in Barrie go to the Tiffin. Tiffin happens to be, a place where they go, but I don't think it's based on the kids. The kids go to the school, and that's where they end up going. I don't know whether or not that means that kids from Springwater Township who go to those schools cannot go there. I doubt that would be the case. But as Councillor Thompson has indicated, it's a tough place we're in. And if this is going to be able to assist us just even for this year, I'm going to support Councillor Thompson on this.
Councillor Thompson.
So just final comments is that you're right, we have funded some busing. That was all through the swing. We also funded an archaeology course through busing from Barrie North High School. That was through the swing. An answer that concerned me about when the NBCA was here about Category 3. If you remember, they talked about this new private school that they're embarking on, and that I asked where the funding was coming from that. And again, they said would be shown up in Category 3 next year. So I see this Category 3 as growing, and I would appreciate Deputy Mayor Cabril's comments. I think taking a break from it would maybe cause them to take a look at it as well, and maybe in the future come back with a more realistic approach. I know that there's an organization, Clean Barrie, that is all volunteers. The boards are all volunteers. They do a ton of tree planting, and it's all done through donations. It's all done through government grants. And I just don't think that we can just keep coming back to taxpayers for, taxpayers can't be the solution to every little problem out there.
Deputy Cabral.
Thank you. I just want clarification on Councillor Thompson's amendment or motion with respect to the funding from the Springwater Swing. Is that included in it? Because I'm supportive of that towards Fort Willow. So I just want to know if that's still going to move forward along with the motion.
Councillor Thompson.
Through the chair to Deputy Mayor Cabral, I think for me anyways, speaking for myself, I think Fort Willow is important to us, for our community. It's important to the township. And I think it's something that we need to find a way, and it was just a suggestion that the swing would be, it's a community event, and I think it would be, for now, an easy solution to make sure that it's secure and funded properly.
And so that would be part of this amendment then, that a portion, that the Springwater portion of the cost of the Festival of Fort Willow be funded from the Springwater Swing funds. Okay. And I will ask Clerk Marshall to read the resolution, please.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So just listening to discussion, council will recall earlier in 2024, council did authorize the execution of the municipal cost apportionment agreement with the MVCA for categories 2 and 3. So the amendment I have drafted kind of addresses that. So the amendment would read that the municipal cost apportionment agreement with the MVCA be terminated to opt out of category 2 and 3. And that the Springwater portion of the cost for the festival at Fort Willow be funded from the Springwater Swing funds. And I just wanted to advise that from my understanding, just quick research, I believe there is a 90-day written notice for termination within that agreement.
Not seeing anything further, council. All those in favor? And that has carried. Now moving on to number 7, the 2025 NBCA asset management levy request in the amount of $16,000 representing Springwater's share be included for consideration. I had this pulled by Councillor Thompson, and a seconder for this, please. Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. So through the chair to C.O. Smith, I know that you explained this to me once, and I still haven't been able to kind of wrap my head around it. So why are there 2 items here? Why is that not included in item number 6? And what specifically is this extra $16,000 and asked for?
C.O. Schmidt.
Through you, Mayor Coughlin, to Councillor Thompson. So it's my understanding, Councillor Thompson, that the asset management levy for the MVCA came forward a number of years ago. And since then, they've kind of always been presenting their budget as they have. So I believe, and I stand to be corrected, I believe through the Conservation Act, there's a piece that kind of talks to their base operating budget, and then another piece that maybe talks to the asset management piece. And I'm assuming that's why they come as 2 separate requests. So in the item that that council just addressed, there is category 1 and category 3. And so there's a portion, 27,000, give or take, of category 3 within that last discussion. Within this portion, the asset management levy, there's also a similar breakdown whereby a portion of that 16,000 also goes towards category 1, which is required under legislation to be paid by the municipality. And then I believe it's around 2,000 or just over $2,000. I don't have the number in front of me, which is category 3. So again, that is subject to council's discussion. And I think further to the motion that was just approved, again, that could be something that council could also look at, is removing the additional $2,000, give or take, of this portion. To answer your question as to what it's for, I believe, again, similar to our infrastructure levy, the MVCA is responsible for various assets. They have obviously the conservation and education center at Tiffin. They have vehicles. They have other equipment, I guess, and assets that they're responsible for managing as well. And so again, similar to our infrastructure levy, they also have this asset management levy to help them have funds to replace and repair their existing assets.
Councillor Garwood?
Thank you, Mayor Coughlin. And just further to CEO Schmidt's comments, category 1 equates to $13,660, and categories 2 and 3 for the asset management portion of the MVCA budget is $2,357, equaling $16,017. This was on the November 18th budget presentation. The capital projects, I'm not going to go through them. There's a variety of projects, most of them outside of the Township of Springwater, computers and server upgrades, and a replacement of one vehicle, one ATV, mounted snowplow for a truck, etc. So various capital projects that have been indicated.
Councillor Thompson?
So, Mayor Coughlin, being consistent, I would propose an amendment to number 7 to remove the category 2, 3, and 3 levy of $2,357.
Seconded by Councillor Garwood. Category 3. Asset management levy. So council, it is that item number 7 would be amended to remove the category 3 asset management levy. And that's the portion, the 2,000, not the entire thing. Anything further on this, council? All those in favor? And that has carried. We will now move on to number 9. Oh, Jeannie, there's no main motion on that, right? That was as amended.
That would be the main motion.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So now moving on to the library program change, the community librarian. I'm mover and seconder for this, please. Councillors Fisher and a second, Deputy Cabral, that the 2025 program change community librarian in the amount of $78,065 be included for consideration in the final draft 2025-26 budget. I'll turn back to Councillor Fisher.
Thank you. I know we talked about this last year. I found the description to be a little bit vague, and I found it to be rather expensive. I know that we had gone back to the library last year and mentioned maybe I'll call it revamping the job description and being more reasonable on the price tag. I just think it should come back before council and be voted on. I think that again, given our budget, this is something that could be deferred. So that's what I have to say about that.
Any other comments or questions on this position? Not seeing any. Council, so this is that the final draft budget be deferred to the 2025-26 budget. So if you do not want this to move forward, 2025-26. Councillor Alexander?
Sorry, are we just talking about the position or are we talking about the whole? Okay, not the library budget. Okay, sorry.
No, this is specific, the library program change, community librarian in the amount of $78,065. So this is what we are voting on here. So if you would like to see this form part of the continued budget, you vote yes. If you don't, you vote against it. Deputy Cabral.
I'm sorry, Mayor, I'm a little bit confused. Are we talking about deferring it so that it's put into the 25-26 budget, or are we, is that what the motion is, to defer it to the 25-26 budget, or is it not proceed with it at all?
At this time, there has not been an amendment to have it form part of the 2026 budget. This says 25-26. If council would like to see it reappear in 26-27, then that would be an amendment to this. Otherwise, the position has failed. Councillor Thompson.
The question, a clarification that this is not part of the township budgets. This is part of the service partners budget. So I don't think we can defer it. I think we could ask, we could turn it down, and the board would come back with it next year. But I don't think we have that authority to defer it. Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I was just trying to be clear that if this doesn't happen, it just doesn't happen. So anything further on this position, council? Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coghlan. Can you just again re-clarify in regards to voting in the affirmative or the negative?
Thank you. So council, this is that the community librarian in the amount of 78,065 be included for consideration in the final draft of the 2025-26 budget. So if you would like to see it continue when Director Bedard comes back at our next meeting with our new number, whether you would like, if you vote yes, if you would like this included in that number, and you vote no, if you would like it not included in that number. So council, all those in favor? And that has been defeated. Moving on to our number 10, this is the 2025 library program change, additional hours in the amount of 26,764 be included for consideration in the final draft budget. Mover and seconder for this, please. Pulled by Councillor Fisher, seconded by Councillor Thompson, and I open up for discussion.
I personally, I have no issue with the hours being extended. I actually think it's of some benefit. What I'm wondering is if that, I believe, was $22,000, could be amalgamated into their budget. So, you know, I guess I would like it deferred until the next one upon second thought.
Okay. Anything additional on this before Councillor Fisher has his deferral? Councillor Garwood.
Thank you, Mayor Coghlan. I want to, and I know we've already spoken to these to some extent, but I see this as a great benefit for not only one community, but two branches, both Midhurst and Elmvale. I think from the information that was provided on the 18th from the library, it spoke to the Township of Springwater in regards to comparator municipalities and the hours that are available, and Wasaga Beach and Collingwood, Blue Mountains, etc. And we were behind on all of those measures. So I see this as a significant community benefit for the entire municipality, and I'll be very much supporting these hours.
Thank you. And I think that this program change is in direct response to our community requests. I think that this is something that the community wants to see, and it's just simply outlined for us in a dollar value. I would agree, though, that once this is approved next year, it'll form part of their base operating budget, because that becomes, so we won't see it as a program change next year. Anything further on this, council? Not seeing any. And Councillor Fisher, you were suggesting a deferral, or are you just going to vote yes or no?
Yes.
Thank you. Council, all those in favor? And that has carried. Council, at this time, I believe we will pause. Yes, so we'll pass a motion to schedule a subsequent meeting at which time we will have our Director of Finance provide us with where we have landed. And then at that time, we can continue through the additional program changes if that suits council. So I'm mover and seconder for the subsequent budget meeting be scheduled to continue budget discussions. I have Councillor Moore and Councillor Fisher. All those in favor? And before I do move to the, before I move to that, I just wanted to, CEO Schmidt or Director Bedard, is there anything further that you would like to see from council today, or is that a clear path forward for our next meeting? Director Bedard?
Thank you, Mayor Cogman, through you to council. I think we have our directions and looking forward to our next meeting when I can provide our updated tax increase.
Thank you for that. May I have a mover and second for the confirmation bylaw, please? Councilors Garwood and Alexander, that bylaw 2024-098 to confirm and adopt the proceedings of council at the special meeting held on November 18th, 2024, listed here and be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. All those in favor? That is carried, and a mover and seconder to adjourn, please. Councilors Fisher and Thompson, that the special meeting of the Township of Springwater does now adjourn at 4:49 PM to meet again on a regular meeting on December 4th, 2024 at 6:30 PM. All those in favor? And that has carried.